Chapter 337. Tianling Mountain was still filled with lush greenery, chirping birds, and the fragrance of flowers. Lu Ping and perfected Liang Xianfeng agreed on a time to visit, then flew towards Chonghua Prefecture. At this time, there were many blood condensation cultivators around Chonghua Prefecture. Because perfected Lu Xianling had advanced to the Dharma stage, the entire Zhenling sect was busy preparing for the Dharma assembly. Looking at the joyful faces of the cultivators, it was obvious that the appearance of every Dharma manifestation Laozu had a great impact on a sect. This was especially so for a place like the North Sea where the overall cultivation situation was far inferior to the East Sea. The birth of a Dharma manifestation Laozu could directly affect the balance of the entire North Sea cultivation world. The cultivators along the way were all puzzled when they saw Lu Ping walking towards them. However, when they got closer and sensed the unfathomable aura from Lu Ping, they all became respectful. Lu Ping didn't mind at all. After he became enlightened Master Lu Xuanling's disciple, other than attending lectures and asking for advice on cultivation problems, he rarely returned to Tianling Mountain. Instead, he cultivated in his own cave dwelling on Huangli Island. Many years had passed, and he did not know the situation on Huangli Island. Huangli Island was located at the outermost part of the buffer zone. After the beast tide, it would probably be the first place to be attacked by the beasts. Judging from the security on Huangli Island at that time, it was very likely that the island had already been attacked by the beasts. It was a pity that the cave abode was not there. Lu Ping had already gathered 5 mini-spirit veins there. There were also some cultivators who recognized Lu Ping and looked shocked. They were obviously surprised by the reappearance of Lu Ping, the 9th disciple of Chonghua Prefecture who had been missing for many years. Most cultivators thought that he was dead. Coupled with Lu Ping's core-forging cultivation, this surprise turned into shock. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ping's identity, cultivation base, and some legends about him spread like wildfire. Whether it was intentional or not, the sudden appearance of a core-forging realm cultivator was enough to attract the attention of the cave dwellings on Tianling Mountain, as well as the clans in Zhenling sect's territory. Not to mention, this core-forging realm cultivator was a little special. For example, his teacher was the newly advanced Dharma manifestation Laozu Lu Tianling. For example, after this disciple went missing, Lu Xianling and Xianchen, 2 core-forging experts, joined hands to wreak havoc in the Yuan family, smashing the Yuan family's manor into pieces. It seemed to be related to this disciple's disappearance. When this disciple went missing, he was only at the 8th layer of the blood condensation realm. In just a few years, he had already reached the 3rd layer of the core-forging realm. Where did he go? What did he encounter? Why did he come back at this time? For a moment, Lu Ping's return was like a small stone thrown into the surging undercurrents of Zhenling. Although it didn't cause any raging waves, it caused the surface of Zhenling to be no longer calm. In Chonghua Prefecture, Lu Tianling Laozu seemed to have already noticed Lu Ping's return. He stood in the Chonghua Palace and smiled as he looked at Lu Ping. When Lu Tianling Laozu sensed Lu Ping's cultivation, the smile on the corner of his eyes became even wider. His face revealed an imperceptible surprise and gratification. Master! When Lu Ping entered the palace, he saw that his master was still dressed in palace attire and looking at him with a smile. He hurriedly walked forward and bowed. Disciple congratulates master on attaining the Dharma stage, Laozu. Lu Tianling Laozu nodded and said, The spirit-forging pill that you provided back then was also a big part of my achievements. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been able to achieve an 8th grade golden core. Lu Ping was overjoyed. He knew that if a cultivator wanted to successfully attain the Dharma stage, it was best to condense a 7th grade golden core or above. His master had achieved an 8th grade golden core, which meant that his future achievements would not be any lower than the mid-Dharma stage celestial phenomenon Laozu. Lu Ping took out a jade scroll and handed it to his master. Master, this is a jade scroll that Uncle Master Liang Xianfeng obtained from Zhongshuan's cave in the East Sea. Uncle Master Liang's cultivation seems to have reached a critical stage of merging spirit items, and he needs to go into seclusion to train. I'm afraid that he won't be able to attend your Dharma meeting, so he asked me to give this jade scroll to you as a congratulatory gift. Lu Tianling Laozu took the jade scroll and scanned it with his divine sense. He suddenly looked at Lu Ping in surprise and said, "The Linhai wave listening technique?" Lu Ping nodded. Lu Tianling Laozu skimmed through it and said happily, "It is indeed the complete Linhai wave listening technique. It is said that when Zhongshuan Laozu of the Fei Ling sect fled to the East Sea, he did indeed take a part of the Fei Ling sect's heritage from Fei Ling Island. At that time, people guessed that the Linhai wave listening technique was among them, but I didn't expect Brother Liang to find it." Lu Ping smiled and said, "With the complete Linhai wave listening technique, this technique can be upgraded to the sixth true technique of our sect in your hands." Lu Tianling looked at Lu Ping and smiled. "I didn't expect my ninth disciple to have learned how to flatter me. But with the complete technique in hand, if I don't try it out, I'd be letting this technique down." At first, Lu Ping was a little embarrassed by his teacher's teasing, but after listening to his teacher's words, he was encouraged by his teacher's confidence. At this moment, second senior sister Li Xuanru, third senior sister Zhao Xuanji, fourth senior sister Wang Xianjing, sixth senior sister Qin Xianwei, and 10th junior sister Jiang Xianxian walked in one after another. Behind them was Lin Qian. Obviously, everyone had heard about Lu Ping's return and came to Chonghua Manor to greet him. Lu Ping greeted his senior sisters and junior sisters one by one, and even Ling Qian greeted him as if nothing had happened. Seeing that Lu Ping didn't embarrass Ling Qian on the spot, Laozu didn't show it on his face, but there was a hint of approval in his eyes. However, 10th junior sister Jiang Xianxian snorted coldly, obviously dissatisfied with Lu Ping's greeting to Ling Qian, but she didn't say anything. Second senior sister Li Xuanru was afraid that the atmosphere would turn awkward, so she said with a smile, "I just heard from one of our disciples that not only has her ninth martial uncle returned, but he has also become a core forging enlightened master. I didn't believe it at first, but now I realize that I've wronged this disciple. Not only has ninth junior brother become a core forging enlightened master, but he has also reached the third stage of core forging. This is truly amazing." "That's right." Fourth senior sister Wang Xianjing was usually the most humorous person. She said with a smile, "Fortunately, I just advanced to the middle stage of core forging last year. Otherwise, wouldn't I be inferior to my junior brother?" Just as Wang Xuanjing's voice fell, sixth senior sister Chen Xuanwei's sour voice sounded. "Fourth senior sister, where can I put my face? This is my first time meeting ninth junior brother, but my cultivation is already 2 levels lower than ninth junior brother's." After Lu Ping entered Chonghua Mansion, sixth senior sister Qin Xianwei had been in seclusion to break through to the core forging stage. It was only after Lu Ping went missing that she came out of seclusion. She was still at the first stage of core forging stage, but she had never met Lu Ping before. However, Lu Ping had obtained an invisible sword art from this sixth senior sister, whom he had never met before. Now, Lu Ping had cultivated it to the minor magical ability realm, so Lu Ping was still grateful to this sixth senior sister. "It's my turn, it's my turn!" Little junior sister Jiang Xianxian had also advanced to the core forging stage. Seeing that the other senior sisters had finished speaking, she hurriedly jumped in front of Lu Ping and stretched out her hand, saying, "Ninth senior brother, your cultivation has finally surpassed me, but you didn't attend the celebration banquet when I broke through to the core forging stage, so you still owe me a gift, and you owe me for so long, so you have to give me too." Tianling Laozu smiled and watched the disciples tease each other. The senior sisters also smiled and watched the little junior sister play with treasures. Lu Ping didn't care and asked with a smile, "Little junior sister, what treasure do you want? You have to say it. If I give you a treasure that I don't like, you can't exchange it with me." Jiang Xianxian rolled her big eyes and deliberately shouted, "Wow, no wonder ninth senior brother was called the treasure boy. You have so many treasures on you that you can choose from." Then, she giggled and said in a coy voice, "Senior martial brother, I want to learn a flying sword, but Daddy and Mommy both said that the flowing cloud flying sleeve is the best as a natal artifact. Do you have a flying sword? It must at least be a top-grade artifact. Lu Ping knew that little junior sister cultivated the wood attribute cultivation method taught by Jiang Tianlin Laozu. He thought for a moment and said with a smile, I have 2 wood attribute flying swords, but they are not top-rank magic weapons. When Lu Ping said this, he saw that little junior sister was a little disappointed. He knew that she really wanted a flying sword, so he said, But I have 2 good spiritual materials to refine a wood attribute flying sword. Sure enough, after hearing what Lu Ping said, Jiang Xuanxuan's big eyes suddenly lit up again. Lu Ping touched his storage ring and took out 2 3-inch thick peachwood branches. He said, These 2 peachwood branches should be enough to forge a pair of flying swords. When the time comes, Lu Yun will carry the peachwood swords in her sleeves. At that time, who in the same realm as junior martial sister would be able to defeat her? These 2 peachwood branches were mutated peachwood branches that fell from the peach tree spirit during its thousands of years of growth. Lu Ping had more than 10 of these mutated peachwood branches, and these 2 branches were relatively thick. They were at least 2 to 3,000 years old, and their quality was almost no lower than a third-rank spiritual material. When the senior sisters saw that Lu Ping casually took out 2 top-grade spiritual materials, they were a little surprised. If these 2 peachwood branches were polished by an expert and made into a top-grade flying sword, in the future, it would be easy to condense more than 4 treasures and become a spirit-connected magic treasure. It was even possible to go 1 step further and become a magic treasure of a higher grade. 4th senior sister Wang Xianjing let out a long sigh and deliberately said, If I knew 9th junior brother had so many treasures, I would have called my good-for-nothing disciples over and asked them to give me some greeting gifts. Everyone laughed out loud when they saw how funny she was. Lu Ping looked around but didn't see 7th senior sister Fan Zihua, so he asked, Why don't I see 7th senior sister? 3rd senior sister Zhao Xuanji, who hadn't spoken until now, said, Your 7th senior sister is in seclusion to break through to the core forging stage. I don't know if she can come out before teacher's Dharma Idol assembly. 6th senior sister Qin Xianwei frowned and said, I originally wanted to wait for 7th senior sister to come out of seclusion to help me prepare for teacher's Dharma Idol assembly. I'm afraid I'll have to do it alone. 3rd senior sister Wang Xianjing glanced at Lu Ping and egged her on. 6th girl, you're stupid. Our Junling's rule has always been that the youngest core forging disciple will prepare for teacher's Dharma Idol assembly. Are you the youngest now? Qin Xuanwei's eyes lit up and she clapped her hands. That's right. Qin Xianwei turned to Lu Ping and said seriously, 9th junior brother, teacher's Dharma Idol assembly depends on you. Junior sister Xian doesn't count. Not only are you teacher's youngest disciple, but you're also the only male disciple. Chapter 338. 6th senior sister Qin Xianwei might not be able to prepare for the Dharma assembly, but Lu Ping was more willing to believe that his senior sisters had deliberately given him this opportunity. The main organizer of the Dharma assembly was a chance for a cultivator to make a contribution. After the assembly was successfully held, the sect and Laozu himself would reward and thank the organizer of the assembly. Lu Ping saw that the senior martial sisters were all willing to let him be the one to prepare for teacher's avatar ceremony, so he no longer declined. He said, Since senior martial sisters are willing to give me a chance to contribute to teacher's avatar ceremony, then I won't refuse. Lu Ping then told his teacher and his senior sisters about his years in the East Sea. When he heard Lu Ping mention little Taoist Master Zhu Xianmeng and little Taoist Master Zhu Xianmeng, Lu Ping clearly felt that his 2nd senior sister, 3rd senior sister, and 4th senior sister were stunned for a moment. They all looked at Lu Tianling Laozu. Lu Tianling Laozu had been listening calmly, and there was not much change in his expression. Lu Ping kept talking, but he had already thought about it in his heart. It seemed that Taoist Master Mei really had a lot of entanglements with his sect, and it was with his teacher. At this time, Lu Ping had already said that after he established the Listening Wave Mansion in the Fallen Mystery Land, he met with Taoist Master Liang Xianfeng according to the agreement. The matter of Lu Ping killing Kun fish demon Kong Liang was naturally concealed by Lu Ping. However, everyone was surprised that Lu Ping could actually establish a force in the fallen mystery land, but after hearing that Lu Ping had become an alchemy master, they suddenly had a trace of admiration. Ling Qian's expression was even more complicated, and no one knew what she was thinking. However, after Lu Ping met Tian Xiang Laozu on Jingzhi Island and repeated Laozu's words, not only did Lu Tianling and Laozu stop smiling, second, third, and fourth senior sisters were also silent, and no one knew what they were thinking. Chen Xianwei, Ling Qian, Jiang Xianxian, and the others were even more confused. Lu Ping was able to figure out something from it. This Taoist master may not only had a big entanglement with his sect, but he also had a grudge with his teacher. No wonder Tian Xiang Laozu always emphasized that brothers should stay outside the wall to defend against their enemies. These words were probably not only said for Taoist master Liang Xianfeng, but also for Lu Ping. He wanted Lu Ping to relay everything he heard to his teacher. After all, his teacher was now the Fa Xiang Laozu. Even if Tian Xiang Laozu was an elder, it would be embarrassing for him to reprimand his teacher. In addition, he was not in Tianling Mountain, so Lu Ping had become a suitable mouthpiece. As for Tian Xiang Laozu's implication that it can be resolved through the younger generation, Lu Ping automatically ignored it. Not to mention that Lu Ping was not interested in Taoist Master Mei, just based on the fact that Taoist Master Mei had a grudge with his teacher. No matter who was right or wrong, Lu Ping would clearly stand on his teacher's side. If they wanted to resolve it, the other party's disciple had to bring it up first, and it would depend on his teacher's own opinion. Lu Ping would never be this so-called bridge. This was also the reason why Lu Ping had always been unwilling to accept help from the boudoir, and would rather take the risk to kill Taoist Master Wang Hua alone. Other than Lu Ping not wanting to be controlled by others, Lu Ping also realized something from Taoist Master Liang and Zhu Xuanming's relationship. He was deliberately not willing to have too much relationship with Taoist Master Mei. Lu Ping's attitude was actually very simple. The content was similar to what Tian Xiang Laozu said, but the essence was very different. I don't fight with you, but I don't get along with you. After telling his teacher and senior sisters about Lu Ping's experiences over the years, Lu Tianling Laozu also answered some of Lu Ping's problems in cultivation. Now that Lu Ping's cultivation was there, many of his questions were quite insightful, and even the second senior sister and the others were quite inspired after listening to him. After Lu Tianling Laozu advanced to the Dharma manifestation stage, whether it was his cultivation, knowledge, or state of mind, all of them had a qualitative leap. He was also more calm in answering some of the questions in cultivation. Often, he would hit the nail on the head, which made everyone feel enlightened. In the end, Lu Ping was the only one asking for advice, and the disciples all asked their teacher for advice on cultivation. Everyone learned from these questions and learned something from each other. When Lu Tianling Laozu saw this, he simply began to give a lecture to his disciples in the Chonghua Palace. This was the first time Lu Tianling Laozu gave a lecture to his disciples after advancing to the Dharma manifestation stage. Not only did he talk about the many problems in the core forging stage, but he also talked about the things to pay attention to in the process of forging the divine will and merging the heaven and earth spirit items. He even talked about how to advance to the Dharma manifestation stage. After a lecture, everyone felt that they had benefited a lot. 3 days had passed. After the lecture, Lu Ping stayed in the Chonghua Palace. After he advanced to the core forging stage, according to Jinling's rules, core forging stage cultivators had to open up their own cave abode on Tianling Mountain. Right now, Lu Ping had returned in a hurry. Although his identity as a core forging sage had been verified, he still had to wait a few days before he could open up his cave abode on Tianling Mountain. Although Tianling Mountain was huge and the cultivators had many extraordinary methods, opening up a cave abode still involved choosing a location, setting up a formation, a spirit vein, a spirit garden, and many other aspects. Lu Ping didn't want to let others do it, so in the end, he opened up a cave abode on the side of a cliff on Tianling Mountain. From the cave abode, One could faintly hear the sound of the waves, which corresponded with the name. Listening Wave Manor. Lu Ping's choice made the Jinling cultivator who was in charge of opening up the cave abode rather surprised. The spirit chi here was quite dense, and the scenery on the sea was not bad. However, the scenery around the cave abode was not good. There were strange rocks everywhere, and the ground was covered with rocks. It was impossible to open up a spirit garden, and there were also many obstacles when setting up a formation. It was precisely because of these reasons that not many cultivators opened up their cave abodes in this area. Lu Ping didn't care about this. He had the House of Gold, and the spirit garden was so big that the spirit vein was not enough for him to use. Why would he bother to open up a spirit garden outside his cave abode like other cultivators? However, Jinling requested every enlightened master to open up a cave abode on Tianling Mountain. Other than the fact that Tianling Mountain had a large spirit vein, which gave it a unique advantage in cultivation, it also strengthened the enlightened master's sense of belonging to the sect. After all, there were some cultivators like Lu Ping who opened up their cave abodes outside of Tianling Mountain after they reached the blood condensation realm. How could they give up on their cave abodes after so many years of development? Even after they advanced to the core forging realm, they didn't often stay on Tianling Mountain. Instead, they hid in their cave abodes outside of Tianling Mountain to cultivate. Even without the support of a large spirit vein, it was more peaceful and free. What's more, Lu Ping already had the spirit amassing pearl for a small spirit vein. In just a few years, he would be able to cultivate a new small spirit vein. At that time, it was hard to say which one would be more beneficial to him, or to share a large spirit vein with thousands of people. In fact, Lu Ping had the same idea. The cave abode on Tianling Mountain was just a temporary resting place. Lu Ping was more willing to manage his Huangli Island. Other than Lu Ping's unwillingness to participate in trivial matters, he had too many secrets that he didn't want to reveal in front of others. The cave dwelling was more or less intact, but it hadn't been carefully carved. There wasn't even a protective array outside the cave dwelling. But Lu Ping didn't mind. After all, the cave dwelling was just a decoration in his eyes. The next day, as soon as Lu Ping finished cultivating, he was startled. He got up and walked out of the cave abode, only to see a slim figure leisurely walking towards the Hearing Surf mansion. Lu Ping stood in front of the cave abode and smiled at the newcomer. He said softly, "I knew you would be the first to see me." His tone was exactly the same as when the person in front of him met him in the Frost Forest array a few years ago. Hu Lily's bright eyes were the same as when she smiled at Lu Ping in the Frost Forest array a few years ago. Her eyes still contained a trace of pride, a trace of gratification, and a trace of longing. Stepping forward, Hu Lily took out a set of array discs from her storage magic tool and handed it to Lu Ping. She said, "I know you're too lazy to take care of the cave abode. You can arrange this set of array discs first. You're a core forging enlightened master after all. How can it be acceptable if the cave abode is bare and only made of stones? Besides, someone might come in a while." Lu Ping smiled and said, "You're really thoughtful. I really haven't thought about how to manage this place." Hu Lily smiled and ignored him. She went straight into the cave dwelling and began to tidy up the place. Stone tables, stone chairs, tea sets, and spirit dishes were taken out from her interspatial mystic instrument and arranged neatly in the cave dwelling. After a while, the entire cave dwelling had been tidied up by Hu Lily. The original stone cave now had the aura of a human residence. Lu Ping set up a cave dwelling protection array formation on the side and placed all kinds of spirit materials around the cave dwelling. Lu Ping inserted dozens of mid-grade spirit stones into the plate, and an invisible shield that looked like a water ripple suddenly enveloped the entire cave dwelling. Lu Ping scanned the entire formation with his divine sense, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. It seemed that Hu Lily's attainments in formations were getting better and better. With her current peak blood condensation cultivation, the formation she created was strong enough to withstand an attack from an ordinary core forging cultivator. If it was under his control, the formation's power would be even stronger. After not seeing each other for so many years, he wasn't the only one working hard, and he wasn't the only one improving. He wondered how his friends from back then were doing. The two of them cooperated with tacit understanding, one inside and one outside. In just a few moments, Lu Ping's listening wave manner had become more and more presentable. From the beginning to the end, the two of them didn't talk about their experiences in the past few years. They were both introverted people and preferred to communicate their feelings through a smile, a look, a gesture, or even a little bit of tacit understanding. At that moment, a long laugh rang out. "Didn't they say that junior brother Lu's cave abode had just been opened? Why does it look like it's been in operation for years? Senior sister who is still as meticulous as ever. You didn't even wait for us to arrive and you've already made preparations." Lu Ping and Hu Lili smiled at each other. When Lu Ping arrived at the entrance of the cave abode, he saw a beam of red light landing in front of the cave abode. The burly Yao Yong immediately withdrew his scorching aura. He looked at Lu Ping and said, "The entire Tianling Mountain said that the missing ninth disciple of Chonghua Manor went to the East Sea, and when he returned, his cultivation had already reached the third layer of the core forging realm. I didn't believe it at first, but now I have no choice but to believe it. I was a little complacent when I advanced to the core forging realm. Sigh, I don't know if I'm just being arrogant or if you're just too monstrous." Lu Ping found Yao Yong's words funny and said, "Senior brother Yao, that's not like you at all." Yao Yong shook his head and walked straight into the cave abode. He didn't need Lu Ping to guide him, it was as if he was in his own cave abode. After a while, Shi Lingling, Chen Lian, Zhong Jian, Ma Yu, Zheng Jie, Ji Zishuan, Yin Zichu, and Zhang Zicheng also rushed over. When they saw each other, they exchanged greetings and chatted happily. Chapter 339. In the Crystal Palace, Zhang Shiji was jokingly referred to as the number one person below the elite disciples. Among the most outstanding mid-core forging cultivators of the Crystal Palace, the first batch of heaven and earth treasures they smelted were at least 2 low-grade earth-ranked heaven and earth treasures. Zhang Shiji was no exception. He cultivated a water-attributed cultivation method, but when he advanced to the mid-core forging stage, he was unable to find 2 low-grade earth-ranked heaven and earth treasures in a short period of time. In a moment of desperation, he had no choice but to use another heaven and earth treasure. Although this heaven and earth treasure was also a low-grade earth-ranked heaven and earth treasure, it was, after all, 2 different heaven and earth treasures. As a result, after Zhang Shiji advanced to the mid-core forging stage, although his strength was not too far off from the most outstanding disciples of the Crystal Palace, many of the senior cultivators of the Crystal Palace who saw the heaven and earth treasures Zhang Shiji smelted felt it was a pity that Zhang Shiji was unable to receive the attention of the sect like these outstanding disciples. Smelting 2 different spirit items at the same time in the process of advancing to the next level would still affect the cultivator's cultivation, even though the attributes were the same. However, this effect was not obvious in the core forging stage. Instead, the effect would become more serious when the cultivator advanced to the Dharma stage and after that. Zhang Shiji was also a proud person. Although he lost his patience and took the wrong step, he didn't think that he would be inferior to those who were valued by the sect in the future. On the contrary, he was more eager to prove his strength in front of the senior cultivators in the sect, hoping to change the sect's opinion of him. This time, the truly outstanding disciples of the Crystal Palace didn't come to the North Sea. In their opinion, the North Sea cultivation world was barren and backward, and there probably wouldn't be any talented people. If they went and defeated all the cultivators of the same level, not only would they gain nothing, but they would also leave the impression of having an unfair advantage in front of the senior cultivators of the sect. However, Zhang Shiji was unwilling to give up on this opportunity. In fact, during his trip to Xianling sect, he had indeed discovered a worthy opponent. That was Xianling sect's number 1 sword cultivator, Ouyang Weijian. Although Xianling sect wanted Ouyang Weijian to avoid the strongest cultivators from the Crystal Palace, and instead fought against the cultivators from the Purple Talisman Pavilion, Zhang Shiji discovered that Ouyang Weijian's strength was already comparable to the strongest mid-core forging cultivators from the Crystal Palace. During his stay at Xianling sect, Zhang Shiji had privately arranged a battle with Ouyang Weijian. After a tough battle, Zhang Shiji won against Ouyang Weijian. However, he knew that he actually had the advantage of having a higher level of cultivation than Ouyang Weijian. If Ouyang Weijian had the same level of cultivation as him, then Zhang Shiji might not have been Ouyang Weijian's match. At the same time, Zhang Shiji also found out from Ouyang Weijian that there was another sword cultivator in Jinling who was as famous as him. That person was Lu Xianting, who was also known as the Water Sword Deity. Although Zhang Shiji was impressed that there were talented people in the North Sea cultivation world, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the fact that the titles Wind Sword Deity and Water Sword Deity were given to mid-stage core forging cultivators like Ouyang Weijian and Lu Ping. In the East Sea, the cultivators who dared to put such titles on their heads were all overlords of their own regions, and they were all in the mid and late Dharma stage. Every single core forging cultivator dared to call himself a sword deity. If this happened in the East Sea, countless cultivators of the same level would have come knocking on their doors. They would definitely teach them a lesson and trample them under their feet. Water Sword Deity. That was the biggest joke in the world. Just as Zhang Shiji, the disciple of the Crystal Palace, issued his challenge, the cultivators who were watching the battle in Jinling went into an uproar. However, there was a hint of anticipation in their eyes. They wanted to see how the most talented water sword deity of Jinling would fight against a cultivator of the same level from the number 1 sect in the East Sea. In front of the Heaven's Spirit Palace, perfected Guixianshan looked at Zhang Shiji, who was standing in the middle of the square, and asked the Crystal Palace cultivator beside him. "Brother Mingshan, may I know who this young friend of your sect is?" "Oh!" Perfected Mingshan from the Crystal Palace looked at Zhang Shiji and scolded with a smile. "Although this disciple is not among the top cultivators of the same level in our sect, his strength is not much different from theirs. Previously, in Xianling sect, he had a private match with a genius called Ouyang Weijian. Relying on his higher cultivation, he won by a fluke. Now, he wants to come out and cause trouble again. Please don't take offense, Brother Gua." Even though Water Crystal Palace's enlightened master Mingshan had belittled Zhang Shiji, his face was still full of smiles, without any hint of blame at all. How could Guixianshan not understand what enlightened master Mingshan was thinking? Thus, he smiled and said, "It's fine for us to just watch as juniors quarrel. There's no need to blame them too much." At this moment, Lu Ping was just about to walk towards the teleportation formation. Hearing this, he only laughed lightly, shook his head, and continued to walk towards the teleportation formation. He had already begun to insert the spirit stones in his hand into the formation. In the square of the Heaven's Spirit Palace, Zhang Shiji waited for a while, but did not see Lu Ping appear. He couldn't help but sneer. "Is this Lu Daoyu looking down on me, or is he just afraid of losing? Previously, I heard from fellow Xianling sect's Ouyang Weijian that you are a cultivator who has grasped a great ability, and is even known as the Sword Immortal. You have never tasted defeat against cultivators of the same level, but who would have thought that you would be so cowardly? How disappointing!" As soon as Zhang Shiji finished speaking, the Jinling cultivators in the square began to scold him. However, Zhang Shiji came from the Crystal Palace of the Eastern Sea. That was a huge sect that was on the same level as the great sects of the Central Plains, so why would he pay any attention to the Jinling sect that could not even be considered as a large sect in the cultivation world? However, just as Zhang Shiji sneered and was about to say something else to humiliate Lu Ping, the shrill whistle of a sword suddenly rang out. Zhang Shiji's expression tightened, and when he looked up, he saw a golden flying sword was already flying toward him from afar, piercing through the whistling sound of a sword. Just as Lu Ping inserted the spirit stones into the teleportation formation disc and was about to activate it to return to Huangli Island, Zhang Shiji's second provocation rang out from the square of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Lu Ping snorted coldly. Originally, he did not want to take part in these trivial matters, but his opponent had forced him again and again. Lu Ping was not a person who would stoop to compromise. The golden scales sword pierced through the air. Zhang Shiji was first overjoyed, but then his heart skipped a beat. He was overjoyed because when the flying sword pierced through the air, he learned from the cries of surprise from the surrounding Jinling cultivators that this flying sword was Lu Xuanping's famous golden scale sword. Lu Ping had finally made his move. Zhang Shiji now had the opportunity to trample the most famous Wind Sword Immortal and Water Sword Immortal beneath his feet. However, his heart skipped a beat. This was because Zhang Shiji's spiritual sense swept in the direction of the golden scale sword, but he could not find any trace of the person controlling the golden scale sword. He could only faintly feel a strong fluctuation of spiritual qi in a place where his spiritual sense could not reach. What did this mean? The legendary fourth-layer core forging Jinling swordsmanship genius spiritual sense was actually above his own. He was able to control a flying sword to attack him from a place where his spiritual sense could not reach. Zhang Shiji's spiritual sense had already reached the limit of a mid-core forging cultivator, so Lu Xuanping's spiritual sense was actually on par with a late-core forging cultivator's spiritual sense. But what could he do? The further the flying sword flew, the more spiritual essence it consumed, and the power of the flying sword would naturally decrease. Even if my spiritual sense was not as strong as yours, I would counterattack. Do you think Lu Xianping is going to run all the way? Zhang Shiji sneered in his heart. A huge crystal wheel rose from his back. The crystal palace rotated rapidly and collided with the golden scale sword. Just as the crystal wheel was about to collide with the golden scale sword trembled in midair and suddenly split into countless golden sword lights. They transformed into a golden torrent of swordsmanship, bypassing the crystal wheel's obstruction and rushing toward Zhang Shiji. Zhang Shiji snorted coldly. The crystal wheel that was bypassed by the torrent of swordsmanship suddenly moved horizontally. The huge wheel rotated rapidly in the torrent of swordsmanship, stirring up a huge vortex in the golden torrent of swordsmanship. The torrent of swordsmanship that was rushing toward Zhang Shiji seemed to be restrained by a force. The vortex stirred by the crystal wheel absorbed all the swordsmanship transformed from the golden scale sword. After Zhang Shiji resolved Lu Ping's torrent of swordsmanship, he wanted to trace the direction of the torrent of swordsmanship. However, before Zhang Shiji could take a step, the vortex of swordsmanship that had already been stirred by the crystal wheel suddenly rippled again. Lu Ping suddenly used the sword light vortex stirred by the crystal wheel to suddenly launch a great swordsmanship divine ability. The huge sword vortex almost swept Zhang Shiji into it. Not only did Zhang Shiji not advance, but he also had to take 2 steps back in order to avoid the Sea of 100 Rivers sword art. How is this possible? This person is so far away from me. How can the divine ability not weaken in the slightest? Could it be that this person's primary essence is so strong that he can ignore the distance between magic treasures? In the blink of an eye, this thought flashed across Zhang Shiji's mind. At the same time, the massive sword vortex had also condensed into a force that continuously attacked the crystal wheel in the center of the vortex. Amidst the densely packed sounds of collision, the surface of the crystal wheel was struck by the sword light, causing countless crystal light chips to appear on the surface. Seeing his life-bound magic treasure being suppressed by the golden scale sword, Zhang Shiji grew furious and shouted, "You are not the only one who can control a great divine ability! Domain Crystal Wheel!" As Zhang Shiji roared, the crystal wheel that was blocking Lu Ping's Sea of 100 Rivers suddenly split into 3, then 9, then 36. A total of 36 crystal wheels formed a giant crystal ball that shuttled back and forth in the air. The crystal ball spun back and forth in the sword vortex, trying to suppress it completely. At the same time, the sword lights that pierced into the crystal ball were also destroyed by the crystal wheel that shuttled back and forth between the crystal ball and Zhang Shiji. Zhang Shiji was overjoyed. Back at Xianling sect, Zhang Shiji had relied on the domain crystal wheel to break Ouyang Weijian's wind flow sword technique. Today, he had once again used the domain crystal wheel to restrain Lu Ping's sword vortex. Zhang Shiji was about to step in the direction of Lu Ping. He wanted to see what kind of person this water sword immortal was, who was so arrogant to actually attack him from thousands of feet away. However, before his domain crystal wheel could crush in the direction of Lu Ping, the golden scale sword that was hidden among the countless sword lights slashed out again. Zhang Shiji's expression immediately changed. Sword array. It's actually a sword array. When a sword technique's great divine ability reached perfection, every sword strike was a complete sword array. Zhang Shiji had no choice but to come to a halt once more. The sword maelstrom he unleashed earlier no longer relied on sword light to wreak havoc. Instead, strands of sword light swirled around the gold scale sword to form a gigantic sword maelstrom, seemingly intent on devouring everything. It was even about to devour Zhang Shiji's domain crystal wheel. Zhang Shiji's face turned red as he retreated with all his might, saving the domain crystal wheel from the powerful devouring force of the sword vortex. However, there were still 3 crystal wheels that he couldn't retrieve in time and were stripped from the domain crystal wheel by several streams. After a series of ear-piercing sounds, the 3 crystal wheels were crushed by Lu Ping's sword array. However, the domain crystal wheel was, after all, a great divine ability inherited from the Crystal Palace. Moreover, Lu Ping was using the Sea of All Rivers sword array from thousands of feet away, so he was already at a disadvantage. After Lu Ping's sword array devoured the 3 crystal wheels, Zhang Shiji's domain crystal wheel great divine ability was undoubtedly broken, and Lu Ping's sword array could no longer continue. The sword lights that filled the sky were absorbed into the golden scale sword. However, everyone present, no matter who it was, could tell who had the upper hand in the battle between the two. The Jinling cultivators cheered. Some of the lower-level cultivators even shouted the name Water Sword Immortal. Reverend Ming Shan, who stood in front of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, had an ugly expression on his face. However, he still smiled at Reverend Gui Xianshan, who was beside him, and said, "I didn't think that your sect would have such a talented disciple. This set of sword technique is like a rainbow absorbing water, and also like the sea absorbing all rivers. The title of Water Sword Immortal is somewhat well-deserved. What I said earlier was too rash. This level of swordsmanship has already far surpassed Xianling sect's Ouyang Weijian." Although Reverend Ming Shan admitted that he had misjudged Lu Ping, he still spoke in an arrogant tone. He was very stingy with words of praise. He only said that Lu Ping's swordsmanship had surpassed Ouyang Weijian's, but he didn't compare it to his own disciple in the Crystal Palace. Clearly, he was very confident in his own disciple's cultivation. The remaining 33 crystal wheels were combined into one by Zhang Shiji. Looking at the dimmed crystal wheel, Zhang Shiji knew that he had lost. This was a complete humiliation to Zhang Shiji. He had fought with the legendary water sword immortal of Jinling, Lu Xianping. In the end, not only did he suffer a loss, but he also couldn't even catch a glimpse of him. He couldn't even catch a glimpse of Lu Ping's aura. This meant that when Lu Ping faced Zhang Shiji again, as long as Lu Ping didn't take out the golden scale sword, Zhang Shiji wouldn't know that the person in front of him was the famous water sword immortal. A look of reluctance flashed across Zhang Shiji's face. A 7-storied crystal pagoda suddenly appeared above his head, and a steady stream of true essence flowed into the crystal wheel. The damaged crystal wheel immediately regained its luster, and with a crisp ringing sound, Zhang Shiji raised the crystal wheel and walked towards Lu Ping. Zhang Shiji's goal was very simple. Even if he lost, he wanted to know who he had lost to. After losing this spar, Zhang Shiji knew very well what he would have to face when he returned to the Crystal Palace. As long as he could see or use his divine sense to capture the water sword immortal who had defeated him, he would at least be able to reduce the humiliation that Zhang Shiji had to bear for the Crystal Palace, even though it was only a humiliation to the Crystal Palace. Thousands of feet away, Lu Ping seemed to have sensed Zhang Shiji's intention. He drew an arc with the golden scale sword several feet away from Zhang Shiji with the hilt of the sword as the axis. Hundreds of golden sword lights formed a golden sword wheel that was half a foot in size, rolling and slashing towards Zhang Shiji. Zhang Shiji naturally did not show any weakness. The crystal wheel and the golden sword wheel collided, creating countless sparks in the air. The two were locked in a stalemate, and Zhang Shiji could not move an inch. However, Zhang Shiji seemed to have made up his mind to break through Lu Ping's obstruction. He shouted, "Solidify!" The first floor of the crystal pagoda above his head suddenly emitted a spiritual light, and a fluorescent light curtain hung down from the pagoda, firmly covering Zhang Shiji. Zhang Shiji did not even have the time to fully control the crystal wheel. He let the sword chi scattered by the golden scale sword splash on the light curtain of the crystal pagoda, creating ripples. Lu Ping had seen this kind of crystal pagoda in the East Sea Northern Alliance Pill Conference. At that time, Ning Xiais, an alchemy genius from the Crystal Palace, had refined a sea-suppressing pagoda with 6 floors. Legend had it that when the sea-suppressing pagoda was condensed to 6 floors, one could use the great divine ability of the Crystal Palace, the Sea-Calm River Great Divine Ability. This was a great divine ability that was even more powerful than Zhang Shiji's cyclic crystal wheel. Legend had it that the Crystal Palace had a supreme divine ability above the Sea-Calm River Great Divine Ability, but this was not known to outsiders. Although Zhang Shiji's sea-suppressing pagoda had only condensed 7 floors, 4 of them had been refined and condensed with treasure enchantments. Impressively, it was a psychic magic treasure. Although it could not achieve the Ocean Calm River Great Magical Power, its defensive ability was far beyond ordinary psychic magic treasures. The golden scale sword suddenly broke away from the entanglement of the crystal wheel and drew a strange arc in the air. A strange one-horned dragon appeared in front of Zhang Shiji. The strange dragon pounced on the sea-suppressing pagoda above Zhang Shiji's head. Its body wrapped around the pagoda, and the scales formed by the sword light rubbed against the pagoda, making a burst of firecracker-like sound. The sea-suppressing pagoda was on the verge of collapse, as if it was about to be pulled out of Zhang Shiji's head by the strange dragon. Zhang Shiji's complexion changed, and the crystal wheel whizzed towards the monstrous flood dragon to kill it. However, he heard a crisp ding sound, and Zhang Shiji felt a huge force suddenly hit the crystal wheel, and the crystal wheel was sent flying. At this moment, there was a loud bang. The strange one-horned dragon wrapped around the sea-suppressing pagoda finally pulled it out of Zhang Shiji's head. Zhang Shiji's face changed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Then he felt a chill on his neck. A faint blue sword shadow flashed in front of his eyes, and then disappeared from his throat. Zhang Shiji's face looked as if it had suddenly lost its vitality, but then he seemed to think of something. He looked up at the sea-suppressing pagoda, and saw that the strange dragon on the sea-suppressing pagoda had disappeared, leaving only the sea-suppressing pagoda floating in the air. Zhang Shiji waved his hand to put away the crystal wheel and the sea-suppressing pagoda, and with a flash of light under his feet, he came to the teleportation formation hundreds of meters away. The light on the teleportation formation had just dissipated, and there was no one on it. Chapter 340. But before that, I have to find a soft persimmon to pinch. Hu Lili saw that Lu Ping had decided to endure for the time being. Just as she was about to breathe a sigh of relief, she was reminded by Lu Ping's words. What do you plan to do? Yuan clan? Li clan? Or Huangli Island's demon clan? From Hu Lili's point of view, no matter which family it was, they still didn't have the qualifications to provoke them. The gap between the middle stage and the early stage of the core forging realm was simply insurmountable. It wasn't as simple as the gap between the 3rd stage and the 4th stage. Lu Ping smiled and didn't answer Hu Lili's question. Instead, he discussed some cultivation issues with everyone and exchanged anecdotes about the cultivation world. For a time, the atmosphere in the cave mansion was stirred up. At the end, Lu Ping went to Chen Lian and took out Landslide. He asked, Brother Chen, do you have a suitable enchantment that can upgrade Landslide into a mystic treasure? In Lu Ping's hands, Landslide was still as powerful as a mystic treasure, but it was only a top-grade mystic treasure after all. This caused Lu Ping to use Landslide less and less frequently after his cultivation base increased. It was no longer as powerful as it was in the past. Chen Lian's eyes lit up when he saw Landslide, and he said, This is the first top-grade magic artifact I've refined. I know that you'll definitely upgrade it to a magic treasure in the future, so I've been paying attention to some suitable treasures for you these past few years. However, even though there are many treasures that are used for heavy attacks and restraints, there are pitifully few treasures that lean towards the water attribute like landslide. I've only collected one in my possession. Even though other similar treasures can be used on it, their attributes aren't compatible, and it'll inevitably affect the might of landslide. Lu Ping handed landslide to Qinlian and said, "Then I'll have to trouble Brother Qin. By the way, I also want to ask where I can find similar restrictions." Qinlian pondered for a moment and said, "Actually, there are many treasures stored in our sex refining pavilion. These treasures are all-encompassing and were collected, improved, and even created by generations of Zhenling cultivators. They are one of the important inheritances of Zhenling." Qinlian smiled when he saw the joy on Lu Ping's face. "However, it will not be easy for you to enter." Hearing this, Lu Ping said casually, "Oh, are there any restrictions?" Qinlian smiled bitterly and said, "Of course there are, and it's not easy to reach the standard. First of all, the cultivators who can enter the forbidden area must be at least at the core forging stage. This is the most basic requirement." Lu Ping nodded and said, "Of course." Qinlian continued, "Secondly, if you want to exchange for a forbidden treasure, you must leave behind another forbidden treasure. The blacksmith pavilion will not make things difficult for you. It is a fair trade." Lu Ping thought about it and said, "That's only natural." Qinlian chuckled and said, "The key is the third condition. The forbidden treasure you want to exchange for must be something that the blacksmith pavilion doesn't have." Lu Ping was a little stunned. He had already thought of the difficulty of this condition. Qinlian looked at Lu Ping and said, "I think you have already thought of it. Zhenling has tens of thousands of years of inheritance, and many generations of cultivators. It can't be said that the blacksmith pavilion has all kinds of forbidden treasures, but there are very few that are missing from the North Sea. It is not easy to find a forbidden treasure that is not in the blacksmith pavilion." Lu Ping was a little stunned. After thinking for a while, he said, "There should be other ways, right?" Qinlian nodded and said, "There are indeed other ways. The most important thing for a sect is its inheritance and foundation. You can use some cultivation method, blacksmith's secret technique, alchemy's secret technique, and other inheritances that the sect doesn't have to increase the sect's foundation. Or you can use some heaven and earth treasures to exchange for it. Or you can make a great contribution to the sect and get a reward. In short, the sect must first recognize your contribution. Only then will you have the chance to get a reward." Lu Ping thought for a while and said, "Then I will have to trouble Brother Qin to give me some pointers. No matter what, I will definitely go to the blacksmith pavilion." As he spoke, he took out a flying sword and asked, "Brother Qin, what do you think of this flying sword?" Qinlian had a long history of learning and was a disciple of the blacksmith master of Zhenling, so he naturally had a good eye. He took a look and said with surprise, "An invisible flying sword? This is rare. Brother Lu wants to upgrade this top-grade flying sword to a magic weapon, right? I am afraid it will not be easy." Lu Ping handed the flying sword to Qinlian and said, "That is why I have to trouble Brother Chen." Qinlian took the flying sword and said helplessly, "The material of this flying sword is not enough to upgrade it to a magic weapon. More importantly, it is too difficult to find an invisible flying sword. It seems that I will have to trouble Master this time. However, this sword is a bit special. I think Master will be very interested in it." Flying Thunder Island was a small island among the hundreds of islands near True Spirit Island. It was also the base of the Li family, a subsidiary force of Zhenling. In the years after the outbreak of the Beast Tide, the Li family's development could be said to be rapid. Not only did they cultivate a small spirit vein for future generations, but the Li family's current head, Li Xianlian, had also successfully advanced to the mid-core forging realm this year. In addition, there was an early core forging realm elder in the family. However, the atmosphere in the Li family was not very good these days. In the Li family's ancestral hall, the two enlightened masters, Li Xianliang and Li Xuanwu, sat at the head, followed by Li Ziming, Li Zixing, Li Ziqing, Li Ziyu, and a dozen other core members of the family. Who would have thought that not only did Lu Ping return alive, but his cultivation base had also reached the third layer core forging realm. I'm afraid the first thing he would think of when the spirit vein on Huangli Island was our Li clan's doing. Now that he has the support of Laozu's teacher, he was a little reckless back then. The one who spoke was enlightened Master Li Xuanwu, one of the only two enlightened masters in the Li family and Li Xuanliang's younger brother. As soon as Li Xuanwu's voice fell, the faces of the people in the ancestral hall changed. When Lu Ping went missing, enlightened Master Xianqin and enlightened Master Lu Xianling caused a huge ruckus in the Yuan family. The Yuan family had 5 enlightened masters in the core forging realm. There was also enlightened Master Xianjin, who had reached the late core forging realm and returned to the Yuan family. However, these 6 enlightened masters were blocked by enlightened Master Lu Xianling in the family's ancestral hall. Then, enlightened Master Xianqin destroyed the entire Yuan family's manor. From this, one could see how powerful enlightened Master Lu Xianling was. You can't say that. He has no evidence to prove that the spirit vein was taken by the Li family. Moreover, if it wasn't for the small spirit vein, eldest uncle wouldn't have advanced to the mid-core forging realm so quickly. Moreover, the current Tianling Laozu is no longer the enlightened Master Xianling. Why would Fa Xiang Laozu stand up for his disciple over such a small matter? If it wasn't for Tianling Laozu, do you think the Li family would be afraid of Lu Ping? The one who spoke was Li Ziqing, the Li Qing from the past. Initially, enlightened Master Li Xuanwu was very angry that someone dared to refute him in the ancestral hall. He felt that his authority was being challenged. However, after seeing Li Qing, he didn't say anything. Li Qing was the successor of the Li family. He was also the Li family's most promising cultivator to become the third enlightened master of the core forging realm. He still had the right to speak in the family. At this time, Li Ziming and Li Ziyu were sitting on pins and needles. In the past, when they stole the spirit vein from Lu Ping's immortal cave, they were the most active. Now that Lu Ping had returned, they were the most terrified. They were afraid that Lu Ping would take revenge on them. Li Xianliang listened to their reasoning and looked at Li Ziming and Li Ziyu. He frowned and was about to speak, but his expression suddenly changed. He said, "Not good." As soon as Li Xuanliang's voice fell, he heard a loud thunderclap in the sky. Li Xianliang hurriedly opened the island's protective array. It was followed by a loud bang sound. The entire flying thunder island seemed to shake. More than half of the hundreds of medium-grade spirit stones inlaid in the protective array in the ancestral hall exploded. Minor magical thunder technique. Li Xuanliang's expression changed. He could no longer be seen in the ancestral hall. The others quickly followed and flew to the sky above the flying thunder island. In the sky above the flying thunder island, Li Xianliang looked at the young cultivator in front of him. His face was gloomy. "Who are you? How dare you attack my Li family in broad daylight?" The young man in front of him looked at Li Xianliang and smiled. "You are Li Xianliang? My name is Lu Ping." Li Xuanliang's expression froze. When the people of the Li family heard Lu Ping's name, their expressions changed. Li Ziming and his son intentionally fell behind the others. They did not want to face Lu Ping. However, how could they hide from Lu Ping's divine telekinesis? Looking at their ugly expressions, Lu Ping knew that they had ulterior motives. Hu Lily's guess was most likely true. Lu Ping, don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you have Master's support. Everything has to be reasonable. You attacked my Li family for no reason. Even if Tianling Laozu is your master, my Li family will go to Jinling to reason with him. We will see if Jinling treats us, the subsidiary forces, as he pleases. Lu Ping glanced at Li Qing, who was standing behind Li Xianliang. He frowned and said to Li Xianliang, "Since when did the Li family let a junior make the decisions? Could it be that you, perfected Li Xianliang, are just a decoration in the family?" Li Xianliang looked at Li Qing with dissatisfaction. Li Qing clenched his fists and looked at Lu Ping with a red face. In the end, Li Xianliang was the patriarch of the family, he said coldly. Although the juniors are rude, their reasoning is good. Do you really think my Li family is easy to provoke? Ha ha! Lu Ping raised his head and laughed as if he had heard a joke. He said, Is your Li family so weak that I can bully the whole family? Li Xianliang was startled. He said, What do you mean? Lu Ping had caused such a big commotion on Flying Thunder Island that many cultivators had noticed. Lu Ping felt his divine sense and divine telekinesis coming and going. He smiled and said, I heard that the Li family's patriarch has advanced to the mid-core forging stage. I have come to challenge him. Are you going to say that I am bullying you? Chapter 341. Tianling Laozu's ninth disciple, the one who had just returned after disappearing for a long time, was challenging the Li family's patriarch, Li Xianliang, a mid-stage core forging enlightened master. Furthermore, he was taking the initiative to challenge him. As soon as Lu Ping's words fell, not only were Li Xianliang and the Li family members stunned, but even the cultivators from the other powers and sects were also stunned. Arrogant! Li Xianliang angrily shouted. It's not easy for you to have such a cultivation at such a young age, but in the end, your knowledge is still lacking. Do you know the huge difference between a mid-stage core forging cultivator and an early-stage core forging cultivator? I advise you to go back and cultivate. Don't bite off more than you can chew just because your cultivation increased too quickly. In the end, the cultivation world relies on strength, not cultivation. Li Xianliang looked at Lu Ping with deep fear in his eyes. Lu Ping was, after all, Lu Tianling Laozu's direct disciple. What kind of person was Lu Tianling Laozu? Although Zhenling had tried his best to downplay the events that had shocked the North Sea 30 years ago, and the other sects were also unwilling to reveal their ugly faces, how could they, who had experienced it, dare to forget? The golden scales sword suddenly appeared out of nowhere. It circled around Lu Ping twice, then pointed its tip at Li Xianliang. Ever since Lu Ping had condensed 2 layers of restrictions on the golden scale sword, it now had a total of 3 layers of restrictions on its body. The golden scale sword's appearance had also changed greatly, so there was no longer any fear of others recognizing it as Taoist Jin Li's natal flying sword. When Li Xianliang saw that Lu Ping had ignored his words and pointed a flying sword at him from afar, his entire body was suddenly enveloped by a wave of killing intent. His face immediately twisted with anger. Good, what an arrogant junior! Today, even if I have to offend Lu Tianling Laozu, I, Li Xianliang, will teach you a lesson. I will let an arrogant junior like you know the true difference between a mid-stage core forging and an early-stage core forging. Lu Ping looked at Li Xianliang's cowardly expression and suddenly laughed. Perhaps Li Xianliang wasn't afraid of him, but he had always been afraid of his teacher, who had become a Dharma adept. That was why he had repeatedly said that Lu Ping was bullying him. Even if Lu Ping lost to Li Xianliang, his teacher would have nothing to say. However, what made Lu Ping feel strange was that although his teacher was the Dharma adept Laozu, in the eyes of outsiders, Lu Ping was the one who had initiated the fight. Even if he lost, he would only be asking for trouble. Even if his teacher was protective, he would never be this protective. Why was Li Xianliang so afraid of his teacher's revenge? Could it be that his teacher had done something like this before? As soon as this thought flashed through Lu Ping's mind, it was quickly discarded by Lu Ping. Even if his teacher had done something like this before, it was for the good of Lu Ping and his disciples. The disciples would only be grateful and wouldn't have any other thoughts. Taoist Li Xianliang took out a magic treasure and released the powerful aura of a mid-stage core forging sage. The Li family members behind him retreated one after another, opening up the space for the fight. Li Xianliang's face was also dignified. The other party had a famous master and took the initiative to challenge him. Although Li Xianliang didn't think that Lu Ping was his opponent, he didn't dare to be careless. Seeing that Li Xianliang was ready, Lu Ping couldn't help but look at his feet. Li Xianliang suddenly seemed to think of something and was about to speak, but he saw the golden scale sword had already turned into dozens of huge swords, slashing towards Li Xianliang. Li Xuanliang's words suddenly turned into a cry of surprise. Unity of sword, sword technique, minor divine ability! As soon as Li Xuanliang's voice came out, the Li family members were in an uproar. Li Xuanwu was stunned. Li Qing stared at Lu Ping, his eyes flashing with jealousy and resentment. Li Ziming and his son hid deeper in the crowd. Li Yu seemed to be trembling? In Lu Ping's perception, the fluctuations of the divine senses that were probing around were bursting with waves of disorder, as if they were transmitting some information to each other. Then most of the divine senses in the sky disappeared, but there were more divine senses. Minor divine ability? The divine senses of a blood condensation cultivator couldn't withstand it. Naturally, it was the core forging cultivators who came to investigate. When Li Xianliang saw Lu Ping use the true essence one sword art and reach the realm of unity of sword, he knew that today's battle would be a little difficult. However, Li Xianliang wasn't afraid. So what if you have a minor divine ability? You're not the only one with a minor divine ability. Li Xianliang shook his magic treasure, and a huge Dharma idol rose up and collided with Lu Ping's true essence one sword art in the sky. However, the result disappointed Taoist Li Xianliang greatly. Although the Dharma image transformed by his natal magic weapon was not as powerful as a small magical power, it had the advantage of cultivation and quintessential essence, after all. He did not expect that it was no match for the opponent's sword technique's small magical power. Swordsmanship was worthy of being called the most powerful offensive spell in the cultivation world. When the two magic treasures collided, although Li Xianliang didn't gain the upper hand, Lu Ping's giant sword was also weakened by a lot. The gigantic sword continued to slash towards perfected Li Xianliang. A tortoiseshell shield covered the sky above perfected Li Xianliang. At the same time, a greenish-red light barrier suddenly erupted from his body and fused with the tortoiseshell shield. A minor divine ability! The Li family members' hearts that were hanging in suspense immediately calmed down. The family head also had a minor divine ability. When Lu Ping saw that Li Xianliang had used a defensive magic treasure and a minor divine ability to block the true essence one sword art together, a mocking smile appeared on his face. When the giant sword slashed on Li Xuanliang's shield, Li Xianliang cursed inwardly. It wasn't that the true essence one sword art was so powerful that Li Xianliang couldn't defend against it, but its power was so small that it was negligible. Even though the true essence one sword art's power had been greatly weakened by Li Xuanliang's magic treasure, a minor divine ability would not only have this little power. Just when Li Xianliang realized that something was wrong, the huge true essence one sword art immediately disintegrated and turned into 800 to 900 spiritual sword lights that attacked the Flying Thunder Island's protective array at the same time. Only 100 to 200 of them were neutralized by Li Xuanliang's tortoiseshell shield when he reacted. In the Li family's ancestral hall, there were originally more than 100 mid-grade spirit stones on the island's protective array disk. When it was attacked by Lu Ping's water thunder, half of them had already exploded. Although the true essence one sword art's power had been greatly weakened, it still shattered half of the remaining spirit stones. Now, the Li family's protective array disk was only left with slightly over 20 mid-grade spirit stones and 5 high-grade spirit stones. Li Xianliang seemed to realize something. While exchanging blows with Lu Ping, he shouted at the Li family members who were watching the battle. "Take charge of the island's protective array disk! Don't damage the island's protective array disk!" Li Qing immediately retreated from the crowd and landed on the Flying Thunder Island. Li Xianliang didn't know that the reason why Lu Ping came to challenge him today was because of the Flying Thunder Island's protective array disk. How could Li Xianliang let him succeed so easily? The golden scale sword drew a circle in the sky around the sword hilt, and it was immediately filled with 1,296 psychic sword flashes. The golden scale sword moved, and all the psychic sword flashes surged forward. A one-horned, four-legged sword dragon pounced at Li Xianliang once again. It was another minor swordsmanship magical power. As Lu Ping's swordsmanship reached the unity of sword and practice realm, he had a glimpse of the major swordsmanship magical power. Not only was the true essence one sword art's power maximized, but the green flood dragon sea disturbance technique had also reached the minor swordsmanship level. This time, not only did the Li family members' expressions change, even Li Xuanliang's pupils shrank. His natal magic treasure brought with it a monstrous spirit chi vortex in the sky and struck at the sword dragon. Under Lu Ping's command, the sword dragon seemed to have intelligence. When it saw Li Xuanliang's magic treasure coming, the horn on the sword dragon's head immediately went to meet the magic treasure. Amidst the loud clang, the sword dragon with the golden scales soared as its horn forced the magic treasure to retreat. The sword dragon also paused for a moment, and then the entire sword dragon chased after the retreating magic treasure. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as if it wanted to tear Li Xuanliang's magic treasure apart. Li Xianliang hurriedly retreated his magic treasure, and at the same time, he controlled the tortoiseshell shield to resist the psychic sword dragon together with his natal magic treasure. However, a dark blue-yin thunder suddenly fell from the sky and smashed toward Li Xianliang, who had only activated a minor protective magical power. Li Xuanliang's expression changed. He did not think that his protective magical power could directly compete with a minor magical power like the yin thunder. He hurriedly dodged, and Lu Ping's yin thunder's ultimate goal was obviously not Li Xianliang. Amidst the loud bang, before Li Qing landed on Flying Thunder Island, the unmanned island protection array had been completely destroyed by Lu Ping's, mistakenly, yin thunder. In the Li family's ancestral hall, all the spirit stones inlaid on the island protection array's disk array exploded, and the entire disk array began to crack. Just as Flying Thunder Island's island protection array failed, a gray-haired rat that was not much smaller than a fat pig suddenly jumped out of the Bluestone Li family's ancestral hall. Its small eyes looked around the ancestral hall, and after seeing that there was no one, it suddenly spat out a mid-grade spirit stone from its mouth and placed it on the ground. Then, it stretched out its front paw and pressed down. A yellow magic power flashed, and the blue stone on the ground suddenly cracked open, swallowing the spirit stone. The gray-haired fat rat quickly walked on the ancestral hall's floor and spat out pieces of spirit stones, which were inlaid into the bluestone floor by its magic power. However, there was not a trace on the surface, and there was not a trace of spiritual power fluctuation. The gray-furred fat rat walked in the ancestral hall in a regular pattern, as if it had been practicing for a long time. A total of 144 mid-grade spirit stones were hidden in the bluestone floor, forming an invisible array formation that enveloped the entire ancestral hall in its center. At this moment, the gray-haired fat rat suddenly looked at the entrance of the ancestral hall, as if it had discovered something. Its four legs that were almost covered by its belly moved quickly, and it walked into the ancestral hall. Then, it plunged its head into the ground and disappeared. A ray of light descended at the entrance of the ancestral hall. It was Li Qing, who was ordered to return from Flying Thunder Island. Li Qing looked at the ancestral hall suspiciously. The situation inside was exactly the same as when everyone left, and it seemed that no one had been here. There was no time to think too much at the moment. Flying Thunder Island's island protection array had been destroyed, and it was more important to restore the array now. If the battle between the two people above Flying Thunder Island affected Flying Thunder Island, the Li family's losses would be even greater. Chapter 342. When Lu Ping's swordsmanship first entered the realm of great swordsmanship and he began to study the Sea of All Rivers sword art, the other 5 sets of swordsmanship in the North Sea 12 orthodox techniques were interlinked and advanced layer by layer. Naturally, their power was also greatly improved, not just the Azure Flood Dragon's sea disturbance art. In other words, if Lu Ping wanted to study the Sea of All Rivers sword art, it was necessary to upgrade the Azure Flood Dragon Sea Disturbance Art, Great River Flowing East Sword Art, and Thousand Snow Pile Sword Art, to the realm of swordsmanship. Li Xianliang had just dodged Lu Ping's Yin Water Thunder, when the golden scale sword, which had transformed into a sword dragon, suddenly turned around in the sky. The entire body of the dragon exploded, and 1296 psychic sword lights turned into a torrent of swordsmanship, rushing towards Li Xianliang again and again. Another kind of small swordsmanship. This time, not only were the people of the Li family trembling with fear, but even the core forging enlightened masters who were spying on them were silent. In water thunder, true essence one sword chi, psychic sword dragon, and torrent of swordsmanship, that Lu Ping had just displayed. Since when did small swordsmanship become so worthless in the hands of an early core forging realm cultivator? How many people in the middle core forging realm could cultivate 4 kinds of small swordsmanship? The power of the torrent of swordsmanship was far beyond that of the true essence one sword chi and psychic sword dragon, because this set of small swordsmanship was a small swordsmanship that Lu Ping had comprehended based on the great river flowing east sword art and thousand snow pile sword art. It was the highest step for Lu Ping to enter the palace of great swordsmanship. When Li Xianliang saw the torrent of swordsmanship rushing towards him, how could he not see the power of this set of small swordsmanship? His whole face suddenly turned pale. At this time, Li Xianliang could no longer care about his previous words to teach Lu Ping a lesson. Now, he was so embarrassed that he couldn't even take care of himself. Lu Ping's 3 swordsmanship spells in a row and the occasional Yin water thunder attack made him, a core forging middle stage Taoist master, finally realize that this cultivator in front of him, whose cultivation time was shorter than Li Xuanliang's, was not as easy to deal with as he previously thought. The torrent of sword techniques arrived with a loud rumble, and Li Xuanliang's magical weapon wailed. Just as he had the time to retract his natal magical weapon, the tortoiseshell magical weapon, which was good for defense, also creaked. Obviously, the protective layer on the surface of the magical weapon, which was stimulated by the Jingqi, had been broken, and the torrent of sword techniques directly bombarded the tortoiseshell magical weapon. At this moment, the island's protective formation of Flying Thunder Island was activated again, and the protective shield that was shattered by Lu Ping was once again propped up in the ancestral hall in the center of Flying Thunder Island. Li Xianliang breathed a long sigh of relief. The reason why he had been resisting Lu Ping's attacks was not only that Lu Ping's continuous bombardment of small magical powers made him unable to fight back, but the most important reason was that after the island's protective formation was deliberately broken by Lu Ping's every attack was intentionally or unintentionally aimed at Flying Thunder Island. If Li Xianliang did not face it head-on, Lu Ping's sword techniques would bombard the island, which was the foundation of the Li family. Just as Li Qing reactivated the island's protective formation and presided over the island's protective formation in the ancestral hall, Li Xianliang finally did not have to face Lu Ping's tyrannical sword techniques head-on. At this time, his natal magical weapon had been severely damaged by Lu Ping's sword techniques, and the tortoiseshell magical weapon was also shaky under the impact of the torrent of sword techniques. Li Xianliang took back the tortoiseshell and fled to the other side. Lu Ping could naturally continue to control the torrent of sword techniques to chase after Li Xianliang, who intended to escape, but Lu Ping pretended that he did not fully control the sword techniques. The entire torrent of sword techniques, after losing Li Xuanliang's resistance, rushed towards the island's protective formation. In the Li family's ancestral hall, Li Qing had just embedded more than 100 mid-grade spirit stones and a few high-grade spirit stones into the array disk, reactivating the island's protective formation. Then, he heard a series of firecracker-like sounds from outside the island. Then, the spirit stones that were just embedded into the array disk crackled like beans popping, and more than half of them exploded. Li Qing was shocked. Looking at the array disk in front of him, monstrous waves surged in his heart. What kind of attack was this? It could actually destroy the Li family's island's protective formation to such an extent. It should be known that the Li family's island's protective formation had withstood 3 minor magical attacks from Lu Ping before it was broken. Now, it was obvious that with just one attack, the entire formation was on the verge of collapse. Outside Flying Thunder Island, the battle had already stopped. 3 core forging masters suddenly appeared outside the battle between Lu Ping and Li Xianliang. Lu Ping looked at the 3 people in front of him with a sneer. These 3 people had rushed to the side and hid when Lu Ping first attacked the island's protective formation. They didn't know that they had already been discovered by Lu Ping. When Li Xianliang saw the 3 people appear, his originally pale face was first filled with joy, followed by a burst of shame and anger. Obviously, he also realized that these 3 people had been hiding on the side. Now that they had come out, they must have seen the battle between him and Lu Ping. Martial nephew Lu is indeed worthy of being senior sister Lu Tianling's disciple. You are indeed outstanding. Your strength is actually comparable to junior brotherly. For the sake of the old man, this battle will be considered a draw. What do the 2 of you think? Li Xianliang wanted to speak angrily, but his mouth couldn't say a word. Lu Ping glanced at this person who called himself Martial Uncle, with a faint smile. Obviously, this person must have opened a cave abode in Tianling Mountain and was a true senior cultivator of Jinling. Lu Ping should greet him as a disciple in front of him, but this martial uncle's appearance was clearly on the Li family's side. Lu Ping was not afraid that this person would dare to pretend to be a cultivator of Jinling. He respectfully bowed and said, "This junior is Lu Xianping, a disciple of Chonghua Mansion. May I know which cave abode martial uncle has opened in Tianling Mountain? I will definitely visit when I have time." The cultivator who called himself Lu Ping's martial uncle chuckled and said, "Old man's name is Xian Yun. The cave abode is also called by the old man, so it's martial uncle Xian Yun. This disciple has also heard of martial uncle from senior sisters, but I just didn't have the chance to meet you." Lu Ping would not show any weakness. This Xian Yun was obviously not a famous person in Tianling Mountain. Although he had advanced to the mid-core forging stage, his potential must have been exhausted. There was no hope for him to step into the late-core forging stage in his lifetime. Therefore, he focused his energy on forming a clique, hoping to increase his status and seek personal benefits for the younger generation. There were many cultivators like this in Tianling Mountain. Although they could not control the overall situation of Jinling, they were the most compatible with the many forces and clans under Jinling's jurisdiction. Lu Ping deliberately mentioned that he had heard of this martial uncle from his senior sisters. He wanted to point out that this martial uncle's status in Jinling was at most equal to his senior sisters, but he was not worthy of Master Laozu's attention. Taoist Xian Yun naturally understood the meaning behind Lu Ping's words. Although he was angry in his heart, his expression was somewhat awkward. This was because what Lu Ping said was true. If Lu Ping did not give him face, his status in Jinling would not be comparable to that of Lu Ping, a newly advanced core forging enlightened master. Lu Ping knew that he could not be too explicit, or else he would become enemies. Therefore, he smiled and said, "Since martial uncle Xian Yun has come forward, this battle can be considered a draw." As soon as Lu Ping's words came out, not only did Li Xianliang and the Li clan cultivators heave a big sigh of relief, even Taoist Xian Yun's expression relaxed a lot. However, this also meant that Taoist Xian Yun had lost the right to speak to Lu Ping as a senior. In fact, in the battle just now, it was clear who had the upper hand. Since Lu Ping was willing to make peace, the Li clan had no reason to disagree. However, what they didn't expect was that today's battle would not only attract the attention of these few people present. The cultivators who had been silently observing with their spiritual sense would definitely spread the details of today's battle. At that time, not only would the Li clan lose face, but the reputation of the 3 enlightened masters who came out to stop the battle would also be affected. This was the effect Lu Ping wanted. After all, this time, Lu Ping came to cause trouble without reason. If the attention of Jinling was focused on the outcome of this battle, then the reason for the battle would be ignored, and Lu Ping's goal would be achieved. At this moment, Lu Ping's gaze had already shifted from Li Xianliang and Taoist Xian Yun to the 2 enlightened masters who came with Taoist Xian Yun. He said, "May I know if these 2 seniors are also enlightened masters of our sect?" Lu Ping's question stunned the 2 of them. They looked at each other, and the one on the left said, We are not the enlightened masters of Tianling Mountain. This is the Lin clan's grand elder, Lin Xianhan. I am Yuan Xianshu, an elder of the Yuan clan. Lu Ping thought to himself, enemies don't meet on a daily basis this time. Those who had conflicts with me and Jinling have all gathered here. Lu Ping smiled and said, So it's the elders of the two patriarchs. Xian Ping has been disrespectful. After today's battle, Lu Ping's name would definitely spread far and wide in Jinling. As long as he did not die prematurely, he would definitely receive the attention of Jinling and be heavily nurtured. Both of them were shrewd people and knew that there was a lot of animosity between the two clans and Lu Ping. Now that Lu Ping was very powerful, not only was he strong, but he also had Lao Zu as his teacher. There were also rumors that this new enlightened master who had just returned from East Sea had not only had a miraculous encounter, but he was also a master of alchemy. This made the two of them even more worried, and their gazes became heavy at the same time. A master of alchemy was comparable to a quasi-dharma adept. Moreover, other than the protection of the sect, the alchemists also had their own system. If these clans were to harm him, not only would Jinling step forward to protect him, but even the alchemy world of the North Sea would intervene. Lu Ping's goal had been achieved, so he naturally would not stay here any longer. Moreover, everyone present was obviously here to help the Li family. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Lu Ping left first. The Li, Yuan, and Lin families and perfected Master Xianyun were silent. After a while, perfected Master Xianyun said, Today's matter has already given Lu Ping the upper hand. Let's go to Brother Xuanliang's house for a while, and we will discuss further. One day later, Lu Ping challenged the Li family's patriarch, Li Xianliang. After gaining the upper hand, because of the interference of perfected Master Xianyun and the elders of the Lin and Yuan families, the news of the two finally shaking hands and making peace was first spread in Jinling, and then spread to many forces in North Sea. What happened to Lu Ping before he disappeared in North Sea was also dug up by some people. A third-level core forging adept had used 3 types of minor swordsmanship and a minor thunder-type magical power. In a short period of time, Lu Ping's reputation among the new generation of adepts in North Sea soared. Water Sword Deity. Lu Xianping jumped to 34th place among the North Sea rising talents. Chapter 343. Dharma adepts were a special group of people who occupied the highest positions in this world. They could be said to be the core of the entire cultivation world, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that they were the rulers of the entire cultivation world. Hence, the birth of every Dharma adept was a major event that affected the entire cultivation world. The Dharma assembly was not only to celebrate the adept who had achieved the Dharma stage, but it was also to show and confirm the status and authority of the adept in the cultivation world. It was also an important opportunity to increase the influence of the adept sect in the cultivation world. In just a few short years, 2 adepts in Jinling had successfully advanced to the Dharma stage. Without a doubt, this was a huge impact on the North Sea cultivation world. Amidst the normal and silent changes in the North Sea, the sect that suffered the most was undoubtedly Xianling sect, which had been the leader of the North Sea cultivation world for thousands of years. Long before Jiang Tianlin Laozu advanced to the Dharma stage, it was said that Jinling had one more Dharma adept than Jinling. Jinling had 6 Dharma adepts, while Xianling's sect only had 5. However, Xianling sect's Daoxing Laozu was the only late Dharma adept in the North Sea cultivation world. This allowed Xianling sect to firmly occupy the title of the top sect in the North Sea. However, in these few years, Jinling had 2 adepts who had achieved the Dharma stage, while Xianling's sect only had Feng Xutao, who had challenged Jiang Tianlin and Laozu in a battle. At this time, although the North Sea cultivation world maintained a unified North Sea alliance due to the increasingly intense battles between humans and demons, a silent storm was brewing in the shadows. In terms of the number of Dharma adepts, Jinling had 2 more than Xianling sect. If Jinling could only barely compete with Xianling sect before, Jinling now seemed to have the qualifications to challenge Xianling sect's position as the top sect in the North Sea. And it seemed that Jinling was not willing to give up on this opportunity. Using this opportunity to add fuel to the fire, Tianling Laozu's Dharma Assembly made its name known to almost everyone in the North Sea cultivation world. Not only did they send invitations to the other 9 sects in the North Sea, as well as friends who knew Tianling Laozu, but some of the major clans and sects in the North Sea that Jinling did not interact much with Jinling's sect, as well as some famous itinerant cultivators, also received invitations. Other than that, there were also many adepts who did not have the qualifications to receive an invitation but came uninvited, harboring all kinds of thoughts. To deal with these people, Lu Ping also made careful arrangements. After verifying their identities, he also made appropriate arrangements. However, he also increased the number of overt and covert surveillance of these adepts. Although Lu Ping had not participated in Jiang Tianlin Laozu's Dharma Assembly, he had heard his 4th senior sister, Wang Xianjing, describe the grand occasion of the Dharma Assembly. However, looking at the scale of the current Dharma Assembly, it was clearly more grand than Jiang Xianlin Laozu's. At that moment, Lu Ping seemed to have a very strange feeling. It was as if his teacher, Tianling Laozu, had organized such a grand Dharma Assembly. Even though there was a hint of Jinling in it, it seemed as if he was trying to separate Jiang Xianlin Laozu. After all, the 2 Dharma assemblies were too close. Less than 10 years was probably just the time for a cultivator to go into seclusion with their lifespans of hundreds of years. It wasn't just Lu Ping who felt this way. Even 2nd senior sister, Lu Xuanru, and the other disciples under Jiang Xianlin Laozu all had strange expressions on their faces. It seemed as if they were Jinling. While promoting the sect's identity, it also contained a trace of Tianling Laozu's personal feelings. Although Lu Ping was fully responsible for his teacher's Dharma Assembly, this was actually an opportunity for Lu Ping, their senior sister, to make a contribution to the sect and be rewarded. Although it was a tradition for the youngest disciple to be in charge of their teacher's Dharma Assembly, Lu Ping was still young and inexperienced. No matter what their intentions were, their senior sisters would do their best to help Lu Ping. It was the same for the other disciples under Jiang Tianlin Laozu. Jiang Tianlin Laozu's carefree mansion only had 5 disciples. Aside from the 3rd disciple, who died because he couldn't break through to the core forging stage, the other 4 disciples had all advanced to the core forging stage. Although Lu Tianling Laozu had a falling out with Jiang Tianlin Laozu for decades and led his disciples to establish Chonghua Mansion, the disciples of both manors had always regarded each other as one. The disciples of Chonghua Mansion had always regarded Jiang Tianlin Laozu as their teacher, and the disciples of Carefree Mansion had also addressed Tianling Laozu as their teacher's wife. The 2 Laozus also allowed this to happen. Their disciples didn't hate each other because of their broken relationship. This was also why, during Lu Ping's apprenticeship ceremony, when spiritual master Xian Jing used the opportunity of Lu Ping becoming Lu Ping's disciple to attack spiritual master Lu Xianling, Jiang Tianlin Laozu's 4th disciple, spiritual master Xianxing, didn't hesitate to offend spiritual master Xian Jing and defend his teacher's wife. Because of Tianling Laozu's Dharma Assembly, a portion of the Jinling protective formation on Tianling Mountain was completely opened. This portion, with Chonghua Mansion as the apex, extended all the way down to the foot of Tianling Mountain, forming a flight of steps formed by the spiritual qi gathered by the protective formation. All the cultivators who came to participate in the Dharma Assembly would land on True Spirit Island as a sign of respect for the Jinling. Then they would walk up the spiritual qi stairs as a sign of respect for Tianling Laozu. Apart from Laozu, who had just achieved the Dharma Assembly, the rest of the cultivators who came to participate in the Dharma Assembly had to be core forging cultivators. This was also an unspoken rule in the cultivation world. The Dharma Assembly was naturally dominated by the cultivators who had just achieved the Dharma stage. If other Laozus came, wouldn't they be the main focus of the Dharma Assembly? At the same time, most of the cultivators who came to participate in the Dharma Assembly were elites among the core forging cultivators of their respective sections. This was not only a sign of respect for Dharma Assembly Laozu, but it was also a form of motivation for the cultivators who came to participate in the Dharma assembly. 2 rays of light landed on True Spirit Island, and 2 young core forging cultivators appeared. A Jinling blood condensation disciple hurried over and asked, "Are the 2 of you here to participate in Tianling Laozu's Dharma assembly?" The cultivator at the front, who was tall and straight and had a scholarly expression, handed an invitation card to the welcoming cultivator. He smiled and said, "That's right. The person who was originally invited was my grandfather, so he sent us 2 brothers here to pay our respects to Tianling Laozu's Dharma assembly." The Jinling cultivator's expression turned serious. Only after Fa Xiang Laozu was invited would he send his juniors to participate in the Dharma assembly. Core forging cultivators had to attend the Dharma assembly personally. If they sent their disciples like Fa Xiang Laozu, it would be disrespectful to Tianling Jinling. The Jinling cultivator received the invitation card with both hands. After opening it, he hurriedly returned it with both hands. He said, "Ah, it's AI Family Island's AI Ruxing Laozu. This must be one of the famous AI family's 2 stars in the North Sea. He's ranked 41st on the North Sea rookie list, AI Buitao. Both of you, please come this way." As he spoke, the welcoming cultivator was about to lead the way. At this time, a slightly shorter and handsome perfected being asked, "I heard that Tianling Laozu's 9th disciple is perfected being Lu Xianping, the one who defeated a mid-stage core forging cultivator with a 3rd-layer core forging cultivation base?" The welcoming cultivator was startled when he heard this. Then, a look of admiration appeared on his face. With a proud tone, he said, "It is indeed Martial Uncle Lu Xianping." Martial Uncle Lu Xianping is one of the youngest core forging cultivators in Jinling. It is said that he has only cultivated for a total of 30 years, but he has already reached the 3rd-layer core forging cultivation base and defeated a mid-stage core forging cultivator in one fell swoop. If it wasn't for the fact that he returned to the sect too late and didn't have more achievements in the war against the demon race, I believe that his ranking in the North Sea rookie list would be even higher. The handsome cultivator's face lit up. "That's great. Can you take me to see him? I'm his good friend. My name is Ai Shu Tao." The welcoming cultivator looked at the handsome cultivator with a strange expression. However, the handsome cultivator was, after all, a core forging cultivator, so he said, "Hee, perfected being, there is no need to be impatient. Martial Uncle Lu Xianping is the organizer of this year's Dharma Idol Assembly in Tianling Laozu. The 2 of you will see Martial Uncle Lu soon." Looking at the cultivators coming and going in all kinds of flashing lights, many core forging cultivators, whose cultivation bases were higher than the 2 of them, were led by Jinling sect's reception disciples up the Spirit Chi stairs towards the Chonghua Palace at the top. Ai Buitao also stood on the Spirit Chi stairs, feeling the density of the Spirit Chi under his feet. He said to Ai Shu Tao, "Jinling sect is indeed rich in resources. Just the density of the Spirit Chi on these Spirit Chi stairs is at least supported by 3 large spirit veins." Ai Shu Tao nodded and said, "That's right. After all, it is a big sect with tens of thousands of years of history." A core forging enlightened master who was passing by stopped in his tracks when he heard this. He turned around and gave Ai Buitao a cold look. It's hard to say. Maybe Jinling sect is just playing to the gallery. After all, it's not difficult to gather a part of the power of the spirit veins in a small area and increase the concentration of spiritual qi to that of several large spirit veins. The 2 Jinling cultivators in charge of welcoming cultivators were angry when they heard this. However, the person who spoke was a core forging perfected being, so the 2 of them did not dare to say anything. Ai Shu Tao was about to refute when Ai Buitao reached out his hand and stopped him. "This perfected being is right. We are just discussing the matter as it stands." The perfected being who spoke snorted and continued to walk towards Chonghua Palace. Ai Shu Tao watched the perfected being walk away and said, "Big brother, why didn't you let me speak just now?" Ai Buitao smiled and heard a voice coming from the side. This perfected being is a cultivator from the Feiyu sect. The relationship between the Feiyu sect and Jinling is not harmonious, so it is normal for him to say a few words. When AI Shu Tao heard this, his face suddenly lit up. He saw Lu Ping standing on the platform in front of the spiritual chi steps with a strange expression, looking at the brother and sister. Not far behind him was the small island in the lake where Chonghua Palace was located. When AI Shu Tao saw Lu Ping, he waved excitedly and shouted, "Big brother Lu!" A green light flashed across Lu Ping's eyes. He smiled bitterly at AI Buetao and said, "Brother AI, you and your sister have been hiding this from me for a long time. AI Shu Tao's brother is actually a woman. What a clever trick!" Chapter 344. A green light flashed in Lu Ping's eyes. He smiled bitterly at AI Buetao and said, "Brother AI, you and your sister really hid it from me. AI Shu Tao's brother is actually a woman. What a brilliant camouflage technique!" Lu Ping's 3 pure true pupils. Minor magical power had basically been cultivated. When he looked at others, even if he didn't deliberately use this minor magical power, Lu Ping's eyes carried the ability to see through falsehoods. Often, even if Lu Ping didn't use his magical power, he could still see through some concealment and concealment techniques on others. Just now, when Lu Ping was greeting the guests on the spiritual energy stairs, he saw AI Buetao and AI Shu Tao, the 2 brothers he met before. However, Lu Ping immediately discovered that AI Shu Tao had an extremely brilliant concealment technique on his body. Even ordinary core forging enlightened master's divine sense couldn't detect him. Driven by curiosity, Lu Ping used the 3 pure true pupils and discovered that AI Shu Tao, who had always been somewhat effeminate, was actually a woman. Thinking about the process of the two getting to know each other, Lu Ping suddenly had a feeling of enlightenment. No wonder he always felt that AI Shu Tao's brother looked a bit strange. Lu Ping also once suspected that AI Shu Tao was a woman disguised as a man, but Lu Ping couldn't find any flaws from her body. When AI Shu Tao heard Lu Ping's words, his excited expression suddenly froze, and then his face turned red. AI Buetao, who was at the side, stepped forward and cupped his hands to greet Lu Ping. He said, "After not seeing each other for a few years, Brother Lu's cultivation level has caught up. During the Battle of Flying Thunder Island, Brother Lu really amazed everyone." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Brother AI, you flatter me. I just barely managed to fight to a draw with enlightened Master Li Xian Liang." AI Buetao laughed and said, "Brother Lu is still so modest. Who in the entire North Sea doesn't know what the situation was like at that time? 3 swords, 1 lightning for minor magical powers. The title of Water Sword Immortal can be said to be well-deserved." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Brother AI, you don't have to praise me anymore. Isn't Brother AI also a famous figure on the North Sea rookie list? I heard that there's a female cultivator on the AI clan island who isn't inferior to any man. Together with Brother AI, they're known as the AI clan's twin stars. She's also a famous figure on the list." AI Buetao laughed and pointed at AI Shu Tao. "Let me reintroduce Brother Lu. This is my 3rd sister, AI Shu Yao. In order to travel in the cultivation world, she always disguised herself as a man. I didn't expect Brother Lu to be able to see through her disguise. It seems that after Brother Lu advanced to the core forging stage, your magical power has greatly improved. 3rd sister's concealment technique was personally used by my ancestor." Ordinary cultivators, even late core forging stage Taoist masters, may not be able to see through it. The Junling cultivator who received the AI siblings heard AI Buetao's words and suddenly looked at AI Shu Yao in surprise. He thought to himself, "So this is the other of the AI clan's twin stars, AI Shu Yao, who is ranked 77th on the North Sea rookie list." AI Shu Yao, who was previously known as AI Shu Yao, shyly stepped forward to greet Lu Ping and said, "Greetings, Brother Lu." Lu Ping was also a bit embarrassed. He had met AI Shu Yao several times, but they had always referred to each other as brothers. It was somewhat difficult for him to adapt to the sudden change of brother to a woman, but he still returned the greeting and said, "Greetings, Miss AI. When Ai Shuyao heard Lu Ping address her as Miss, it was obvious that he was distancing himself from her, and her face was a bit gloomy. Ai Butao watched from the side, so he said, although Brother Lu had the upper hand in the battle with perfected Li Xianliang, you suddenly rose from a nobody to the 34th place on the North Sea rookie list, which caused a lot of cultivators to be dissatisfied. Brother Lu, you have to be careful. I'm afraid someone will take the opportunity to make things difficult for you during your Master's Dharma characteristic assembly. If Brother Lu loses to a cultivator whose ranking is lower than yours, I'm afraid your Master will also lose face. Lu Ping nodded gratefully, then smiled bitterly and said, Thank you for your advice, Brother Ai, but I'm afraid trouble has already come. Ai Butao was surprised. When he turned around and followed Lu Ping's gaze, he saw two perfected persons, led by Jinling's welcoming disciple, walking up the Spirit-Chi stairs. One of them, a tall, slender, second-stage core forging cultivator, walked up the platform. His eyes were like sharp swords, and he instantly stared at Lu Ping. Greetings, perfected Master Lin Xuqing. Haha, how have you been, Brother Ouyang? The two perfected persons in front of him were Xianling sect cultivators who came to participate in the Dharma characteristic assembly. The middle-aged cultivator in front was someone Lu Ping had met once. He was perfected Master Lin, who had appeared with perfected Master Feng Shutao on the trip to Fei Ling Island. The other person was Lu Ping's old rival, Feng Shutao's proud disciple, Ouyang Weijian. Perfected Master Lin Xuqing only nodded and walked past Lu Ping and Ai Butao. Perfected Master Lin was a veteran late-stage core forging cultivator. After Feng Shutao, he was one of Xianling sect's most promising candidates to enter the Dharma characteristic stage. He didn't care about the status of Lu Ping and the others at all. When Ouyang Weijian walked past Lu Ping, he paused and turned his head to look at Lu Ping. Water sword deity, hee, I haven't seen you in years, but Brother Lu's swordsmanship hasn't diminished at all. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows and said, Why are you disappointed, Brother Ouyang? Ouyang Weijian chuckled coldly and followed perfected Master Lin Xuqing to the island in the center of the lake. When the two were far away, perfected Master Lin Xuqing suddenly asked without turning his head, How was it? Ouyang Weijian's earlier provocative expression disappeared. He said with a serious expression, Strange, my sword-heart psychic didn't sense any danger from him. Could it be that his victory over Li Xianliang was really like the rumors say? That Jinling and Li Xianliang put on a show to help him gain fame? Perfected Master Lin shook his head and said, According to our secret investigation, this Lu Ping and the Li family do have some enmity, but we can't rule out the possibility that the Li family will use this matter to lower their heads to Lu Ping. After all, this Lu Ping has a Dharma adept backing him up. Ouyang Weijian's expression was resolute. No matter what, during this Dharma assembly, I must fight with this Lu Ping. I lost to him a few years ago, but I've been training hard in swordsmanship and have had a few fortuitous encounters. My level of practice is no lower than Lu Ping's, and it's not like I haven't fought with mid-core forging adepts before. I've already reached the stage of unity of practice and sword, and I've mastered more than one minor sword technique. This time, I must humiliate Lu Ping during the Dharma Assembly and make Xunling's Dharma Assembly the laughing-stock of the North Sea. Perfected Master Lin glanced at the excited Ouyang Weijian and said coldly, Do you think the Dharma Assembly is something you can ruin? Even if you defeat Dharma Laozu's disciple, so what? Don't forget that your master is also Dharma Laozu, and he achieved Dharma before Laozu. Even if you defeat Lu Ping, you'll only be giving Xunling some trouble. Do you think a small early core forging adept like you can challenge Dharma Laozu's authority? Although perfected Master Lin's voice was low, it was like a nail, hammering each word into Ouyang Weijian's mind. When Ouyang Weijian heard this, he immediately restrained his excitement and said, I was too arrogant just now. Thank you, Uncle Master, for the reminder. Perfected Master Lin looked at Ouyang Weijian's clear eyes and nodded slightly. He said, That Lu Ping is not a pure swordsman. Swordsmanship is only one direction of his cultivation. He must have other tricks up his sleeves, and I heard that he is also a brilliant alchemist. If you want to challenge Lu Ping at the Dharma Assembly, you have to insist that it is a competition of swords to liven things up. When Ouyang Weijian heard this, he stopped in his tracks, his expression somewhat unwilling. He was a pure swordsman, but Lu Ping was not. If he used words to say that it was only a competition of swords, it would undoubtedly weaken Lu Ping's methods. Ouyang Weijian had always hoped to defeat Lu Ping in a fair and square manner, to wipe away his previous humiliation. However, Perfected Master Lin was doing this for his own good, but he was also telling him that Perfected Master Lin did not think that Ouyang Weijian had the confidence to defeat Lu Ping. At this time, Perfected Master Lin looked at the surrounding scenery with a somewhat surprised expression. When Ouyang Weijian saw Perfected Master Lin's expression, he asked, "Uncle Master, did you notice something?" Perfected Master Lin's expression was somewhat solemn as he pointed at the shore around the small lake. "The growth of these spiritual plants is very strange." Ouyang Weijian followed Perfected Master Lin's finger and looked at the colorful flowers and trees. He saw that the entire small lake was surrounded by blooming spiritual flowers. The entire small lake was like a mirror decorated with fresh flowers. Ouyang Weijian asked in confusion, "These are just some ordinary spiritual plants. But to be able to decorate the entire small lake with so many blooming spiritual flowers, it is already considered a big move by Zhenling. However, to make so many spiritual plants bloom at the same time, even if they are not wasted, their medicinal efficacy will be greatly reduced. Even in our Xianling sect, we would not be so wasteful." Spiritual Master Lin's expression was solemn as he said, "No, these spirit grasses weren't forced to grow. I can sense that every single one of these spirit grasses is filled with vitality. Not only did the spirit energy and medicinal power within them not decrease, but they are even more abundant than normal spirit grasses." Ouyang Weijian was shocked. "How is that possible? The process of spiritual plants blooming is usually extremely short. With so many spiritual flowers blooming at the same time, there must be at least tens of thousands of them. Could it be that the production of spiritual plants in Zhiling's spiritual garden has already reached such a large scale?" Perfected Master Lin frowned as he pondered. No matter how much he thought about it, he could not figure it out. Zhiling's spiritual garden would never reach such a scale. Even if it did, Zhenling would not publicize it to the public. Could it be that Zhenling has already mastered an extremely rare spiritual herb growth technique? This technique can accelerate the growth of a large number of spiritual plants at the same time without damaging the roots of the spiritual plants. This thought flashed through Perfected Master Lin's mind. Immediately after, a figure appeared in his mind. He then muttered to himself, "Could it be that she has returned? No, if she has returned, even if she has this kind of heaven-defying divine ability, there is no reason for her to use it at Lu Tianling's Dharma conference." The two of them walked to the front of the lake suspiciously. Suddenly, two strange fish demons appeared in the lake. The fish demons gently waved their tail fins at the two of them, as if inviting them to come forward. One of the two fish demons was at the early stage of the blood condensation realm, while the other was at the late stage of the blood condensation realm. One of them was at the early stage of the core forging realm, while the other was at the late stage of the core forging realm. Perfected Master Lin and Ouyang Weijian looked at each other, then stepped on the two fish demons' bodies. Immediately, the two fish demons swam slowly towards the island in the center of the lake. The two fish demons carried the two of them side by side, but their speed was not fast. It was as if they were taking tourists to enjoy the scenery of the lake. At this time, many cultivators had already arrived at Chonghua Manor. Because the Dharma conference had not started yet, they stood on the surface of the lake with the fish demons, enjoying the scenery of Tianling Mountain. At this time, there were 30 to 50 core forging enlightened masters on the surface of the lake. Occasionally, familiar enlightened masters would meet and greet each other. As Perfected Master Lin and Ouyang Weijian swam in the lake, they would also greet the cultivators they met. However, they did not stop exchanging pleasantries. Xianling sect and Zhiling had always been rivals in the North Sea. Now that everyone was in Zhiling's territory, They naturally would not joke around with Xianling sect cultivators in public. However, at this time, perfected Master Lin's brows furrowed even more. Ouyang Weijian also noticed something and said, "Uncle Master, look at the fish demons on the surface of the lake. There are 50 of them now, and who knows how many more that haven't appeared yet. All of them are blood condensation Dao soldiers, and they are so well trained that the 2 fish demons under our feet can be said to be at will. If there are 30 early-stage blood condensation Dao soldiers, they can even fight against a late-stage core forging cultivator who has yet to comprehend any divine abilities." After hearing Ouyang Weijian's words, perfected Master Lin's already gloomy face darkened even more. How could perfected Master Lin not see that these Dao soldiers were so well trained without the restriction of the Dao soldier formation? They were even more disciplined than the demon soldier formation. An idea flashed in perfected Master Lin's mind. He spread out his divine perception and probed the bottom of the lake. Suddenly, his expression changed, and he quickly retracted his divine perception. Ouyang Weijian had been paying attention to perfected Master Lin. When he saw the change in perfected Master Lin's expression, he hurriedly asked, "Uncle Master, did you discover anything?" Perfected Master Lin said helplessly, "I can't see the situation at the bottom of the lake clearly. It's as if the bottom of the lake is a huge Dao soldier formation." When my divine perception entered the bottom of the lake, it was blocked by the formation. I didn't discover anything. The 2 of them suspiciously went to the island in the center of the lake and arrived at the hall of Zhonghua. At this time, most of the core forging enlightened masters who were participating in the Dharma Manifestation Assembly had arrived. The seat of honor in the center of the hall was naturally Tianling Laozu's seat. Below him were 9 seats in a row for the other 9 sects of the North Sea. Below them were dozens of seats for the various families, forces, sects, and famous itinerant cultivators who were participating in the Dharma Manifestation Assembly. There were also hundreds of seats outside the hall for cultivators who did not receive an invitation but came because of the Dharma Manifestation Assembly. Those who came were guests, and Jinling had no reason to stop them. 3 Dharma gongs shook the sky. The time for the Dharma Manifestation Assembly had arrived. The representatives of the various sects who had accepted the invitation sang and entered. Gulong Island's Wu Clan, 9 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Congratulations to Lu Tianling Laozu for advancing to the Dharma Manifestation stage. Wan Sang Island's Sunset Faction, 1 mutated spiritual material, a piece of 1,000-year-old fire jade. Congratulations to Tianling Laozu for achieving immortality. Sanglang Sect, 2 bottles of half-step Dharma Manifestation stage elixirs, 9 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Congratulations to Laozu for enjoying immortality forever. Shui Yen Pavilion, 1 extraordinary fog pearl, 1 jar of mutated spiritual material, 100 flower dew nectar. Xianling Sect, 1 bottle of Dharma Manifestation stage elixirs, 3 bottles of half-step Dharma Manifestation stage elixirs, 1 Chango fruit, and 1 Chango palace. Spiritual Master Lin stepped forward and handed the list of gifts to the Jinling cultivator. Then, he entered the hall with Ouyang Weijian and headed for the seat next to Tianling Laozu. Lu Ping realized that among the cultivators who had come to participate in the Dharma Manifestation Assembly today, the 9 sects each sent a late-stage core forging cultivator and an early-stage core forging cultivator. Each late-stage core forging cultivator was famous among the core forging stage spiritual masters in the North Sea cultivation world. It could be said that they were the most promising cultivators in their respective sects to advance to the Dharma Manifestation stage. Each early-stage core forging cultivator was also the best among the new generation of cultivators in their respective sects, and they were all on the North Sea Rookie list. The independent sects and cultivator clans in the North Sea that were second only to the top 10 sects also had this kind of arrangement. Of course, compared to the top 10 sects, the cultivator's reputation and strength were undoubtedly much worse. This was also the advantage that the top 10 sects had in being the best in the North Sea cultivation world. After the various sects were seated, they stood up one after another and respectfully invited Tianling Laozu. Amidst the congratulatory voices, Lu Tianling Laozu, dressed in a palace robe, appeared in the seat of honor in the center with a graceful and elegant air. Everyone congratulated him again, and Tianling Laozu also stood up to thank him. Then he said, "Everyone, you have come from afar. Chonghua Palace is simple and crude, and the disciples are stupid. If they have been disrespectful, please do not blame them." Everyone naturally said that they did not dare. Bursts of buzzing sounds could be heard as a group of bees with purple heads and golden bodies, each the size of a fist, slowly flew in from outside the hall of Zhonghua. Each amethyst bee had an ink-colored bamboo cup on its head, and a faint and elegant fragrance immediately filled the entire hall of Zhonghua. These are purple crystal bees. Purple heads and golden bodies, they are indeed purple crystal bees, and they are already mature. There are actually such treasures in the North Sea cultivation world? These purple crystal bees have already been tamed into Dao soldiers. Wait, if there is a mature purple crystal bee swarm, there must be a purple crystal bee king that has advanced to the blood condensation realm. Then, the legendary alchemy treasure, the purple crystal royal jelly, also exists. There was no lack of knowledgeable people in the Chonghua Palace. When they saw the bee swarm, they immediately recognized that it was the extremely precious purple crystal bees in the cultivation world. Everyone looked at Tianling Laozu enviously. Tianling Laozu smiled and said, "Everyone, please have some tea." The purple crystal bees landed one after another, and a cup of hot tea was placed on every seat. Everyone raised their cups in greeting. Only then did they realize that the bamboo cups in their hands were actually made of a high-grade spiritual material, black spotted bamboo. At the bottom of each bamboo cup was a finger-sized fire jade stone, causing the tea in the cup to be boiling hot, and the fragrance of the tea filled the room. Using high-grade spiritual material to make teacups, and inlaid with high-grade fire jade stones, Zhenling sure is generous. Everyone thought to themselves. But then, a cultivator said softly, "This is a top-grade spiritual tea, curved phoenix tea? Didn't they say that this type of spiritual tea is extinct in the North Sea? This is a specialty of the East Sea." At this time, everyone's eyes turned to Lu Ping. Because it was said that this ninth disciple of Tianling Laozu had just returned from the East Sea after going missing, this curved phoenix tea must have been produced by this North Sea's rising star, the water sword immortal. It's not just curved phoenix tea. After drinking the tea, the fragrance lingers in the mouth, and the spiritual energy contained in the tea far exceeds that of a top-grade spiritual tea. Clearly, there is also purple crystal honey added to it. A cultivator who had a penchant for spiritual tea said softly as he held the bamboo cup in his hand. The 9 great sects looked at each other, their eyes flashing as if they were transmitting some kind of message. The spiritual power contained in the spirit tea in their hands was more abundant. Obviously, it was not amethyst honey that was added to the tea, but amethyst royal jelly. Even if these core forging stage cultivators drank it, the true essence in their bodies would be stimulated, and their cultivation speed seemed to be a little faster. A clear spring suddenly flowed in from outside the hall of Zhonghua, passing by each cultivator's table. All sorts of delicacies, spiritual fruits, and spiritual vegetables were placed on jade plates and fell into each cultivator's table along with the flowing water. At this time, second senior sister enlightened Master Li Xuanru turned to Lu Ping and said with a smile, "Old Jiu, you really have a lot of ideas. Junior brother made a lot of arrangements for teacher's Dharma idol assembly." Fourth senior sister Wang Xianjing obviously couldn't hold it in anymore. Seeing that Li Xuanru was the first to speak, she immediately asked, "Old Jiu, tell me honestly, why did the tens of thousands of spiritual herbs around the lake bloom at the same time? Also, I found that those spiritual herbs didn't have any secret techniques cast on them. On the contrary, the spiritual energy and medicinal power contained in the spiritual herbs are very abundant. It's clearly no different from normal spiritual herbs that have matured." Lu Ping laughed and said, "This is because teacher's good people are blessed by the heavens. Teacher has reached the Dharma idol stage, and even the heavens are congratulating teacher." At the side, Jiang Tianlin Laozu's fourth disciple, perfected Master Xianxing, laughed and said, "Kid, you still dare to lie? A few days ago, I saw you walking back and forth in the spiritual herbs around the lake. I don't know what you were doing, but you still won't tell me the truth." "There's more, there's more." Little junior sister Jiang Xianxian also jumped out at this time and said, "Ninth senior brother, the Dao soldiers in the lake have been reared by mother for a long time, but the different types of Dao soldiers still can't cooperate with each other. Why can't you make them listen to you?" Lu Ping laughed and began to pretend to be ignorant, causing everyone to ridicule him. Lu Ping also had no choice. Guan Yu was used up by him. Although the tens of thousands of spiritual herbs were some of the lowest level, Guan Yu was able to continuously use his supernatural power and almost exhausted his qi. At this time, he was recuperating in the Golden House. As for the Dao soldiers in the lake, this was easy. Samling was still in the lake commanding the reared Dao soldiers and playing happily. No beast dared to challenge the Green Sea Snake's royal bloodline. Moreover, Samling's cultivation level was unrivaled among the reared Dao soldiers. Lu Ping didn't know how his arrangement made the cultivators who came to participate in the Dharma Idol assembly feel. At least perfected Master Lin Xuqing from Xian Ling sect had been sitting in his seat, his expression constantly changing. At this moment, a loud voice sounded again. "Disciples of Tianling Laozu, please come forward and present your gifts." Chapter 345. Since Lu Tianling and Laozu had reached the Dharma stage, the status of their disciples in the sect would naturally rise as well. However, the first person to present a gift was not the second disciple of Chonghua Palace, enlightened Master Li Xuanru, but the eldest disciple of Carefree Manor, enlightened Master Xiantian. Some of the cultivators who didn't know what was going on were flabbergasted, especially the newly advanced Golden Core enlightened masters. They curiously asked the seniors of their sects when Chonghua sect gained a sixth-layer core forging senior disciple. Moreover, it was a man. Enlightened Master Xiantian held a jade box in his hand and respectfully bowed. "Disciple Xiantian congratulates Master for reaching the Dharma stage. I hereby present 3 warm jade flowers, wishing Master a true spirit and eternal life." Warm jade flowers? Lu Ping looked at the 3 jade-carved flowers in the box in surprise. These flowers had the same effect as the golden nut in his hand, which could strengthen a cultivator's body. Lu Ping knew that the Avatar Grand Ancestor seemed to have a special preference for this kind of treasure. Lu Ping knew that the Avatar Grand Ancestor was fond of it. There were naturally cultivators in the palace of Chonghua Palace who were knowledgeable. Some cultivators who didn't know the use of these things also asked the knowledgeable cultivators. The cultivators in the palace were all Core Forging Realm enlightened masters. They had more or less heard about the Dharma stage, especially the late Core Forging Realm enlightened masters. When they heard about the effects of this spirit medicine, they looked at Wen Yuhua with endless envy. Lu Tianling and Laozi looked at Xiantian with a warm expression. "Xiantian, get up! Why isn't Xianhui here?" Taoist Master Xianhui was Taoist Master Xuantian's Tao companion. Taoist Master Xiantian replied, "Please forgive me, mistress. Xianhui has been cultivating in seclusion since last year and has yet to come out. This has delayed mistress's Dharma celebration." Old Ancestor Lu Tianling nodded and didn't say anything. On the side, enlightened Master Xiantian saw that old Ancestor Lu didn't ask any more questions, so he retreated. Lu Ping noticed that when his teacher asked about enlightened Master Xianhui, not only did second senior martial sister, third senior martial sister, and fourth senior martial sister look nervous, but the other 3 senior martial brothers were also stunned. It wasn't until enlightened Master Xianhui left that everyone's expression finally relaxed. The second person to offer a gift wasn't Li Xuanru, but Carefree Manor's second disciple, Taoist Master Xiangua. Although Taoist Master Xiangua's gift wasn't anything special, just 9 stalks of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs, Taoist Master Xiangua used his own name to present a gift, so it was quite generous. Then, it was Reverend Li Xuanru's turn. Reverend Li Xuanru was the eldest disciple of Chonghua Manor, so her gift was naturally eye-catching. Wood Spirit Pill! Lu Ping was very surprised that second senior sister actually had this kind of special pill in her hands, and there were even 3 of them. Although this kind of pill wasn't lost, it was almost non-existent in the world of practitioners. This was because, in addition to the difficulty of making a half-step transcendence pill, there was also an important spiritual guidance, and this spiritual guidance was more or less related to Lu Ping, which was the heart of a wood phoenix during the core forging stage. Wood spirit pills weren't meant for practitioners to consume, but to accelerate the growth of spirit herbs. Legend had it that a wood phoenix's golden pill in the hands of a transcendence adept was enough to accelerate the growth of tens or even hundreds of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs. This was also the reason why the wood phoenix was gradually becoming extinct in the world of practitioners. Naturally, wood spirit pills didn't have that kind of effect, but wood spirit pills that used the heart of a wood phoenix as the spiritual guidance was enough to accelerate the growth of a few 3,000-year-old spirit herbs. The value of the wood spirit pill wasn't in its acceleration, but in its selectivity. 3,000-year-old spirit herbs were treasures that could only be encountered by luck, and not sought after. When transcendence adepts were refining pills, they would often be short on 1 or 2 spirit herbs and would have to spend a lot of time looking for them. However, with the wood spirit pill in hand, they could accelerate the ripening of any 3,000-year-old spirit herbs that were not yet ripe and needed urgently. In the world of practitioners, the wood spirit pill was considered a relatively obscure pill. Most of the practitioners in the hall didn't know about it, but this made them even more certain that it was an extremely valuable treasure. Next, third senior sister Zhao Xuanji and fourth senior sister Wang Xianjing went up one after another, followed by Carefree Manor's fourth disciple, Reverend Xianxing, and fifth disciple, Reverend Xianhan. When it was Lu Ping's turn to go up, many practitioners in the hall of Chonghua were paying attention to him. They all wanted to see what kind of treasure this core forging sage, who had suddenly risen to fame in the North Sea world of practitioners, would bring out. In fact, outside of the Chonghua Palace, the North Sea practitioners who had come to participate in the Dharma Realm Assembly were already gasping in surprise when the perfected masters of the various sects performed the ceremony. In the eyes of these practitioners, these treasures usually only existed in legends. Now that they had seen the real thing, their respect for the great sects grew even more. This was also the purpose of Zhenling's promotion of the prestige of his own sect. Through word of mouth from these practitioners, Zhenling's status in the North Sea world of practitioners would increase and attract more practitioners to join them. When it was the turn of the disciples to present their gifts, the practitioners were even more shocked. If the previous ceremony had appeared as a whole, then although the gifts were precious, they were nothing compared to the foundation of these forces. Now that the disciples of Tianling Laozu were presenting gifts purely based on their own foundation. If the practitioners in the hall of Chonghua were praising Zhenling's prestige and letting the other sects bask in the glory, then now it was time for Zhenling's family to perform. Lu Ping slowly stepped forward, a foot-long jade plate in his hand. 3 large spirit peaches with glowing surfaces were held in his hand. He said to his teacher, "Disciple Lu Ping presents 3 spirit peaches. I wish teacher a long and prosperous life." The observing cultivators were somewhat stunned when they saw the spirit peaches in Lu Ping's hand. Such large spirit peaches were rare in the world of cultivation. Among mortals, longevity peaches had the meaning of longevity. However, in the world of cultivation, there were no famous spirit fruits called peaches. Although Lu Xianping was the 9th disciple of Tianling Laozu, he was actually Laozu's last disciple. Back then, Lu Tianling Laozu had caused a huge ruckus in the Yuan family for this missing disciple. It was a big event that shocked the world of cultivation in the North Sea. Now, he was only presenting 3 ordinary spirit peaches as a congratulatory gift. It was really impolite. Many cultivators shook their heads and sighed. Others watched coldly from the sidelines, as if watching Zhenling make a fool of himself. Could these be spirit peaches? Just as the people in the hall were whispering, The person who suddenly spoke surprised Lu Ping. It was enlightened Master Lin Xuqing from Xianling sect, one of the 9 great sections. Senior Lin is very knowledgeable. Lu Ping smiled. These are the 3,000-year spirit peaches that I obtained by chance. Enlightened Master Lin Xuqing continued. Did you obtain these spirit peaches from the peach blossom tree spirit? Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. He shook his head. Peach blossom tree spirit? I've never seen it before, but I received it from a senior who said that these 3 spirit peaches are called spirit demon peaches. From Senior Lin's words, it seems that you're very familiar with these spirit demon peaches. Could you explain to me? Lu Ping's words had greatly reduced the doubts in enlightened Master Lin Xuqing's heart. Although Lin Xuqing did not want to talk about the spirit peaches again, Lu Ping's question was beautiful. At this moment, all the cultivators in the hall and outside the hall were looking at him inquisitively. If he did not answer, he would give off a feeling that he was too high and mighty to explain, which would damage Xianling sect's reputation. Enlightened Master Lin Xuqing pondered for a moment, then said, There is a special kind of demon called spirit beasts. These spirit beasts are demon cultivators, but their wisdom is awakened by plants, trees, bamboo, and stones. They can only be cultivated for a very long time. This is because the 7th patriarch of the heaven-splitting sect did not pass down many inheritances regarding spirit beasts, and the few that he did have were mostly fragmented. It is not enough for a spirit beast to cultivate to the Dharma manifestation stage, let alone to become a true spirit. Moreover, the appearance of spirit beasts is very rare. Usually, it takes tens of thousands of years for a spirit beast to awaken its wisdom. Spirit beasts that awaken their wisdom do not have any cultivation inheritances, and usually only reach the blood condensation stage by instinct. However, because these spirit beasts have lived for too long, almost every spirit beast's body is full of natural treasures, and they are coveted by both human and demon cultivators. That is why it is very rare to see spirit beasts in the cultivation world. Enlightened Master Lin Xuqing paused, then said, These 3 spirit demon peaches are the fruits of the peach tree demon. If the spirit chi contained within them is refined into a medicinal pill, it will be the most precious medicinal pill for Dharma manifestation. However, Martial Nephew Lu said that these 3 spirit demon peaches were left behind by a predecessor. This predecessor is very skillful, to be able to preserve the spirit fruits so well after leaving the peach tree demon. Enlightened Master Lin Xuqing only briefly explained about spirit beasts, then stopped talking. In the end, he even schemed against Lu Ping, causing people to suspect that Lu Ping had actually obtained a peach tree demon. Lu Ping was a little regretful. He actually did not know much about spirit beasts, and this time, he had fallen into Lin Xuqing's trap. However, he still smiled and said, Thank you, Elder Lin, for clearing my doubts. I did not think that the 3 spirit peaches that I obtained by chance would have such a background. Enlightened Master Lin Xuqing nodded slightly and did not speak anymore. His expression was a little unhappy. Lu Ping did not mind and presented the spirit demon peaches. He heard his teacher laugh softly and say, Ninth brother, you are always able to come up with something unique. Aren't you afraid that people will take your title of cultivator with many treasures for granted? Lu Ping knew that his teacher was reminding him not to be targeted by people with ulterior motives. At the same time, he was warning everyone present not to be greedy. As a Dharma manifestation cultivator, Lao Tzu's warning naturally carried a lot of weight. In fact, when Lin Xuqing pointed out the origin of the spirit demon peaches, many cultivators in the hall had their eyes twinkling. In the cultivation world, the strong preyed on the weak. Killing and robbing was not uncommon. It was just that the cultivators who did it had a strong foundation, so it was more secretive. After waiting for everyone to finish presenting their gifts, the cultivators in the Palace of Repetitive Beauty began to speak and verify each other's cultivation gains. Among them, the Heavenly Spirit Ancestor's cultivation experience in the core forging realm and his understanding of breaking through the core forging realm were the most important. It was also the fundamental reason why so many core forging realm cultivators from various sects were attracted. Just as the Dao platform was set up, a voice said, Tianling Laozu's Dharma Manifestation Conference is so grand, how can there not be cultivators practicing and competing? Although it is elegant to sit and talk, it is not as profound as doing it yourself. This junior is Xianling sect's disciple, Ouyang Weijian, and I am willing to offer a brick to attract jade. I am willing to exchange swordsmanship with Brother Lu Xianping. I hope Brother Lu Xianping will not be stingy. Chapter 346. In the cultivation world, during lectures and Tao discussions, sparring was not rare. It was not rare for such things to happen during the Dharma Idol assembly. In the process of sparring, most people would stop at the appropriate point, and they would stop when they had gained something. However, during the Dharma Manifestation Assembly of the Jinling cultivators, a Xianling sect disciple had issued a challenge. This meant that the sparring process had changed somewhat. Furthermore, Ouyang Weijian had insisted on sparring with Lu Ping. Before Lu Ping could say anything, the atmosphere in the Hall of Repetitive Light was already thick with gunpowder. How dare you! All the seniors present have yet to speak. How dare you, a junior, speak up? Hurry up and apologize to Tianling Laozu and all the seniors! Perfected Master Lin Shiqing shouted at Ouyang Weijian. However, his voice sounded like the two of them were putting on a show. Haha, Perfected Master Lin, please don't blame the junior like this. The one who spoke was the Flying Feather sect cultivator who had rebuked Ai Shiyao on the Spirit Chi steps. Martial Nephew Ouyang must have admired Martial Nephew Lu's reputation for a long time. Martial Nephew Lu was only at the early core forging stage when he fought against a mid-core forging stage cultivator. Although both of them are disciples of the Jinling sect, it is still a rare achievement. I heard that Martial Nephew Ouyang once fought against a mid-core forging stage demonic cultivator as a third-core forging stage cultivator and rose to the 39th place on the North Sea Rising Talent list. The Flying Feather sect had always followed Xianling sect's lead. This perfected master's words could be considered sinister. When he mentioned the battle between Lu Ping and Li Xianliang, he was implying that both of them belonged to the Jinling sect and that the duel was not accurate. On the contrary, Ouyang Weijian fought against the demonic cultivator, and there was no possibility of him cheating. In fact, when Ouyang Weijian came to participate in the Dharma Manifestation Assembly, Lu Ping already knew that the two of them might have to fight. Thus, he had asked his fellow sect members about Ouyang Weijian's past achievements. Ouyang Weijian's battle with the mid-core forging stage demonic cultivator happened when Ouyang Weijian had just advanced to the third core forging stage. Ouyang Weijian had actually lost that battle, but the perfected master demonic cultivator could not do anything to him and could only allow him to retreat. Ouyang Weijian's fame rose from that battle. Later, it was said that Ouyang Weijian devoted himself to cultivation and his swordsmanship improved greatly. When he sparred with Xianling's mid-core forging stage demonic cultivator, he was able to gain the upper hand. Although it was unknown to what realm his swordsmanship had reached, it was certain that he had reached the stage of unity of sword and practice. At this moment, the Sky Spirit Laozu spoke. Since Martial Nephew Ouyang wishes to liven things up with swordsmanship, as his seniors, we should also test the cultivation achievements of the younger generation. In that case, old Jiu, you should spar with Martial Nephew Ouyang. Don't overdo it, but don't harm his life. The Sky Spirit Laozu's words sounded as if he was telling Lu Ping not to harm Ouyang Weijian's life, as if he was certain that Ouyang Weijian was no match for Lu Ping. Ouyang Weijian's expression changed when he heard this, but he did not dare to disrespect the Sky Spirit Laozu. Thus, he leaped to the center of the hall and said, "Please enlighten me, Brother Lu!" Lu Ping smiled and stepped into the hall. He turned to Ouyang Weijian and said, "Brother Ouyang is too polite. Please!" The two of them leaped out of the hall and hovered in the air above the small lake outside the Hall of Repetitive Beauty. Be it the cultivators who were participating in the Dharma characteristic assembly or the cultivators who were attending the ceremony outside the hall, they were all shocked. Divine senses filled the sky and swept over, circling around the two of them. Many divine senses seemed to have come from the other cave abodes on Tianling Mountain, and they were also very interested in this sword competition. Lu Ping and Ouyang Weijian could be said to be the leaders of the new generation of cultivators in the North Sea's cultivation world. Although they were only ranked 34th and 39th on the North Sea Rookie list, the list recorded core forging cultivators under 100 years old. Currently, Lu Ping and Ouyang Weijian were only in their 40s or 50s. In the eyes of other core forging perfected masters, they were as young as demons. Before Ouyang Weijian decided to challenge Lu Ping, he had done a deep understanding of the battle between Lu Ping and Li Xianliang. After Lu Ping used 5 minor magical abilities in a row, when he used the last minor magical ability, Torrent of Sword Techniques, he was unable to completely control it. It was clear that he had reached the limit of the magical abilities that Lu Ping could control, and this was the biggest reason why Ouyang Weijian was confident that he could defeat Lu Ping. The golden scales sword, which was covered in scales, revolved around Lu Ping, its tip pointed at Ouyang Weijian. Ouyang Weijian looked at the golden scales sword and sensed the sword intent coming from it. He suddenly smiled confidently, and the sound of a sword rang out. A cyan flexible sword that looked like a spirit snake appeared around Ouyang Weijian. The flexible sword seemed to be swimming in the air. Not only did it sway and twist at will, but it also seemed to be able to lengthen and shorten at will. A psychic magic treasure. When Lu Ping saw this magic treasure, his expression turned serious. It wasn't because a psychic magic treasure was more powerful than an ordinary magic treasure that could only condense 3 treasure seals, but because Ouyang Weijian's cultivation was only at the 3rd stage of core forging. It was impossible for him to condense a psychic magic treasure with 4 treasure seals. In other words, Ouyang Weijian's natal flying sword hadn't appeared. In other words, like Lu Ping, Ouyang Weijian still had a trump card. The first to strike was Ouyang Weijian. His flexible sword was like a taut spirit snake. In the blink of an eye, nearly 1,000 sword silhouettes flew towards Lu Ping. They were like sentient wind snakes, their tongues flicking in and out of their mouths, bearing their sharp and poisonous fangs as they swarmed towards Lu Ping. Gale's sword. Psychic sword light. Ouyang Weijian's first move was the fiercest sword technique in the Merry 18 Swords. It was second only to the Unity of Sword and Practice minor technique. The Merry 18 Swords wasn't just one set of sword technique, but a total of 18 sets of sword techniques. Each sword technique was a complete set of sword techniques. These 18 sets of sword techniques were interlinked and developed step by step. In the end, they would become the foundation of a major sword technique. Lu Ping had once obtained the Merry 18 Swords from Reverend Liang Xianfeng. Although it wasn't a secret technique of Xianling sect, it lacked a lot of essence, especially the key to combining several sets of sword techniques after reaching the Unity of Sword and Practice realm. This was the most important part of Xianling sect's sword technique inheritance. It was usually passed down by word of mouth within the sect. Even so, Lu Ping had a very clear understanding of this set of sword technique. The golden scale sword launched later but arrived first. The 1,296 sword rays morphed into nimble water snakes and pounced on the wind snakes. Each water snake's attack could annihilate a wind snake. In Lu Ping's eyes, Ouyang Weijian's strong wind sword was like a venomous snake that was ready to expose its weak spot. The strong wind sword was instantly countered by Lu Ping. Ouyang Weijian was a little surprised. He seemed to be surprised that Lu Ping could break his sword technique so easily, but he didn't panic. Just as the wind serpents were vanquished by the water serpents, Ouyang Weijian unleashed 6 sword techniques in a row: Ardent Wind Sword Technique, Gale Sword Technique, Gale Sword Technique, Swift Wind Sword Technique, and Storm Sword Technique. Ouyang Weijian compressed the essence of each of the 6 sword techniques into one sword technique and slashed it towards Lu Ping. This was also one of the unique features of the Merry 18 Swords. This set of sword technique wasn't like ordinary sword techniques that went from easy to difficult. On the contrary, it went from difficult to easy. It was said that the senior who created this set of sword technique was a grandmaster in swordsmanship. This set of sword technique was originally a great divine swordsmanship that this grandmaster directly comprehended. Later, in order to pass down this great divine swordsmanship, the senior had to simplify this divine swordsmanship into 3 types of minor divine swordsmanship. Then, from these 3 minor divine swordsmanship, each evolved into 6 sets of sword techniques, which later became the signature sword technique of Xian Ling sect, Merry 18 Swords. Later on, when the cultivators studied this set of sword technique, they would be able to start from the simplest sword technique and refine it to the extreme. Then, they would be able to evolve the entire set of sword technique into one sword technique, reaching the realm of sword intent. Then, they would be able to combine the 6 swords into one sword technique, reaching the power of the sword technique's minor divine ability. Finally, they would be able to combine the 3 minor divine abilities into one sword technique. Then, they would be able to achieve the great divine ability of the sword technique that Xian Ling sect's predecessors had comprehended. This also caused the cultivation of the Merry 18 Swords to be different from ordinary sword techniques. Orthodox sword techniques were generally divided into 3 stages in the realm of sword intent: complex sword practice, psychic sword ray, and unity sword practice. Usually, cultivators followed this order when practicing sword techniques. But for the 18 swords, before each set of sword technique reached the realm of psychic sword ray, every 9 psychic sword ray had to be combined into one sword technique. Then, when the entire set of sword techniques was combined into one sword technique, it would become a minor divine swordsmanship. 6 sets of sword techniques combined into 6 swordsmanships that seemed to contain the full power of the 6 sets of sword techniques. Lu Ping swung his sword horizontally, and the 1,296 psychic sword rays turned into 6 psychic sword dragons that whizzed toward the 6 swordsmanships. Amidst the clanging sounds, the 6 psychic sword dragons were cut down, and the 6 swordsmanships seemed to have lost their power after cutting the psychic sword dragons, losing control and flying in all directions. However, at this moment, the 6 swordsmanships suddenly converged from different directions, and an even more dazzling sword ray was formed, flying straight toward Lu Ping. 6 swordsmanships as one, a minor divine swordsmanship. Lu Ping's gold scale sword vibrated once more, transforming into a psychic sword dragon that pounced forward. The psychic sword dragon disintegrated and the gold scale sword returned to Lu Ping's hand. As for Ouyang Weijian's 6 swordsmanships as one minor divine swordsmanship, it was also dispersed. In this confrontation, it seemed that the 2 of them were still evenly matched. However, Lu Ping knew that he was at a disadvantage. Ouyang Weijian had only attacked once, while Lu Ping's gold scale sword had attacked twice. Of course, Ouyang Weijian had the advantage of his Dharma treasure. After all, the gold scale sword was no match for his opponent's psychic Dharma treasure. Ouyang Weijian smiled proudly, and the psychic flying sword drew a strange and unpredictable trajectory in the air. 6 swordsmanships scattered from the rapidly flying psychic flying sword before merging back into one, attaching themselves to the main body of the psychic flying sword and attacking it. Lu Ping's face turned grim, and his psychic flying sword burst out with his divine sense, trying his best to capture the trajectory of the psychic flying sword in the sky. The gold scale sword flew out of his hand, and the true essence one sword strike transformed into a gigantic sword that reached into the sky, slashing at the main body of the psychic flying sword. Chapter 347. Another ear-piercing sound of metal clashing rang out in the sky. The golden scale sword turned around and flew back. The psychic flexible sword trembled and lost its chance to attack Lu Ping again. The 2 attacks were evenly matched. Ouyang Weijian's expression changed. Lu Ping's golden scale sword was actually able to grab onto his flying sword. Although his sword technique wasn't the strongest, it was the most unpredictable and unpredictable. When the opponent realized that something was amiss, the sword technique would have already struck its target. Ouyang Weijian's expression changed. What he didn't know was that Lu Ping's divine sense far exceeded that of cultivators of the same level. Now, it was not inferior to cultivators of the 5th or 6th layer of the core forging realm. Furthermore, Lu Ping had the 3 pure true eyes. With the coordination of the two, he was able to capture the location of the psychic flexible sword. However, the psychic flexible sword had the advantage of the magic treasure. Although the golden scale sword had found its flaw and struck the sword first, no one was able to gain the upper hand. Ouyang Weijian's fingers moved like butterflies flying through flowers. One sword sign after another was formed. The psychic flexible sword trembled, and countless sword lights and wind blades covered the sky as they rushed towards Lu Ping. The psychic flexible sword flashed and disappeared among the sword lights and wind blades. Lu Ping suddenly took a step back in the air. The golden scale sword drew a circle in the sky. It looked as if it had pierced through a celestial river. A torrent of sword arts rushed towards the sword lights and wind blades that filled the sky. A shattering explosion sounded as if firecrackers had been set off in the sky. A large number of sword lights and wind blades and torrents of sword arts were annihilated in the sky at the same time. A breeze was able to pass through the spiritual power turbulence caused by the collision of the 2 minor divine abilities and blow towards Lu Ping. A cyan light flashed in Lu Ping's eyes. He swung the golden scale sword horizontally, but it hit empty air. Lu Ping quickly retreated. The golden scale sword suddenly turned into a slash in the middle of thrusting forward. Amidst a crisp ringing sound, the golden scale sword finally struck the psychic soft sword. However, the soft sword wasn't knocked away by Lu Ping's attack. Instead, it suddenly bent to neutralize the force from the golden scale sword. The body of the sword suddenly thinned and the tip of the sword enlarged, stabbing straight at Lu Ping. This was beyond Lu Ping's expectations. The golden scale sword was too late to block. As Lu Ping quickly retreated, Lu Ping's vigor chi quickly appeared around him to protect him. Minor divine ability of protection. Water screen genuine aura. Ouyang Weijian finally forced Lu Ping to use his minor divine ability of protection. Ouyang Weijian smiled coldly. So what if it was a minor divine ability of protection? The psychic flexible sword was also known as the wishful sword. It was best at piercing through the opponent's minor divine ability like a needle-shaped dharma treasure. The psychic flexible sword stabbed into the water screen genuine aura, but it was stuck halfway. Ouyang Weijian's cold smile immediately froze on his face. How was this possible? How could his minor divine ability of protection be so powerful that it could actually withstand the stab of a needle-shaped dharma treasure, even if the stab had been weakened beforehand? Gold, blue, and green colors flickered with each other, but at different times. The area of 30 feet around Lu Ping seemed to be a world under Lu Ping's control. When the psychic flexible sword entered it, the spiritual essence on the sword was first corroded, then the force on the sword was weakened. Then, a sticky feeling attached to the sword, making it difficult for the psychic flexible sword to advance any further. This person's minor divine ability of protection is much more tyrannical than cultivators of the same level. It is almost no weaker than ordinary dharma treasures. No wonder this person has never used a dharma treasure. If Lu Ping knew what Ouyang Weijian was thinking, he probably wouldn't know whether to laugh or cry. It wasn't that he didn't use a dharma treasure, it was that he didn't have one on him. Fortunately, Lu Ping's dharma chi had already begun to condense the 4th heaven and earth treasure, the weak water. This was a water attribute heaven and earth treasure that Lu Ping obtained after killing the Quinn fish demon Kong Liang. It was probably prepared for the 7 treasures thunder calabash. However, Kong Liang's cultivation was only at the 3rd layer of core forging at the time, so he couldn't condense the 4th dharma treasure for the 7 treasures thunder calabash. He could only leave the weak water until he reached the middle stage of core forging. He didn't think that it would benefit Lu Ping. Although Lu Ping was amazed by the tyrannical power of the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash, he didn't intend to continue to condense this treasure. Therefore, after Lu Ping obtained the weak water, the first thing he thought of was to condense the 4th water attribute heaven and earth treasure for his minor divine ability of protection. Since the psychic flexible sword missed its target, Lu Ping quickly retreated. But how could he let go of such an opportunity to counterattack? He swung the golden scale sword thrice in the air, sending 3 sword waves towards Ouyang Weijian. Ouyang Weijian couldn't let Lu Ping take the initiative so easily. The spiritual soft sword that was flying back arched and returned to the size of an ordinary flying sword. It stabbed out 18 times in the sky in a row. It was the 18 sets of sword techniques in the merry 18 swords of wind. For a moment, both sides abandoned their minor divine abilities and fought with speed, intending to seize the initiative. The waves were caused by the wind. Although Lu Ping's 1,000 piles snow sword was sharp, it was restrained by Ouyang Weijian's wind attribute swordsmanship and couldn't display its endless momentum. Lu Ping's golden scale sword left his hand again, and the sword momentum changed again. The great river flows east. Sword technique was like a rolling torrent, rushing towards Ouyang Weijian with an indomitable momentum. For a moment, Ouyang Weijian seemed to have an illusion. It was as if he had transformed into a reef in the river, trying to stop the torrent from moving forward. In the end, he was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot, drowning and being swept away by the torrent. The battle between Lu Ping and Ouyang Weijian could be said to be the highest level of the most outstanding young cultivators in the North Seas cultivation world. All the cultivators watching from below, regardless of their cultivation level, were watching the battle in the sky with rapt attention. But in private they were multitasking, discussing with their friends about the swordsmanship of the two, the changes in the swordsmanship, the techniques used to face the enemy, the flaws in the swordsmanship, and so on. After the 2 people in the sky gave up their powerful swordsmanship, the scene of the battle was less thrilling, but it became more exciting. The sky was full of flying wind snakes and swimming swordfish fighting each other. In the sky, one seemed to have turned into the source of the storm, while the other seemed to be the source of all water. At that moment, Lu Ping was missing the water ghost sword. If he had this sword, Lu Ping would have another trump card. At the very least, Lu Ping would be able to unleash the power of the invisible sword art. That way, he would be able to make up for the difference in quality between the golden scale sword and the psychic flexible sword. Just as Lu Ping thought of the water ghost sword, a thought flashed through his mind. He suddenly realized that he seemed to have overlooked something. At this moment, Lu Ping felt a great sense of danger looming over him. It was Ouyang Weijian's natal flying sword. Lu Ping did not hesitate. The golden scale sword once again transformed into a torrent of swordsmanship. However, this time, the torrent of swordsmanship was not aimed at his opponent. Instead, it surrounded Lu Ping to form a huge vortex. From the sky, it looked like a huge waterspout. The cultivators watching the battle all looked at Lu Tianling Laozu, who was sitting in the seat of honor. No matter how they looked at it, this swordsmanship was very similar to the great magic that Lu Tianling Laozu had used before she reached the Dharma manifestation stage. Although Lu Tianling Laozu was not a sword cultivator, her successful cultivation of the great magic, the waterspout, was indeed based on the swordsmanship recorded in the Linhai wave listening technique. Lu Ping had heard his teacher talk about it several times, and he had also heard his teacher talk about the cultivation method of the waterspout in detail. Naturally, he had used it as a reference. This time, Lu Ping turned the torrent of swordsmanship into a waterspout, not to hurt his opponent, but to protect himself. The wind blade formed by the psychic soft sword rushed towards the waterspout, intending to completely break it, but it was like a clay ox entering the sea. However, immediately after the psychic soft sword, an invisible force turned into a black line that seemed to be able to devour the wind. A sound of metal clashing could be heard. The black line had already broken the waterspout in one fell swoop, and it slashed towards Lu Ping, who was hidden in the waterspout. However, the waterspout that was broken suddenly shrank and turned into a circulating torrent of swordsmanship again, blocking in front of the black sword light. The black flying sword broke through the torrent of swordsmanship, and the golden scale sword waited for it to exhaust itself. It collided with the black flying sword, and the golden scale sword was sent flying back. The black flying sword's attack was fruitless, but it created another opportunity for the psychic soft sword. You are indeed hiding your strength. You can freely change the torrent of swordsmanship. You don't look like you were unable to control your swordsmanship divine power after using it in the battle with Li Xianliang. But even so, you will definitely lose today. You are not the only one who has hidden their strength. Ouyang Weijian's mind raced, and the psychic soft sword took advantage of the moment when the golden scale sword was sent flying by his intrinsic flying sword to once again cast the sword minor divine power. This sword minor divine power was very different from the minor divine power formed by the Merry 18 swords. It was clearly a brand new sword technique. At that moment, Ouyang Weijian's intrinsic flying sword recovered from the collision with the golden scale sword. It scattered a semicircular arc in the sky, as though it had transformed into a folding fan. It suddenly fanned at the golden scale sword that had been sent flying. It was another sword minor divine power. Ouyang Weijian cast the two minor swordsmanship skills with all his might. The two minor swordsmanship skills seemed to be able to complement each other, as if they were meant to complement each other. The spirit-connected flexible sword and the natal flying sword were like two streams of wind that chased each other as they flew towards Lu Ping. Although the Merry 18 swords is our sect's most famous sword technique, our Xianling sect has thousands of inheritances. How can we only have one set of sword techniques that can become a minor divine power? Ouyang Weijian's heart was cold. It was as though he could already see Lu Ping losing to his surprise combination of two minor divine powers. This was Ouyang Weijian's true trump card. Perfected Lin Xuqing sat upright in his seat and casually glanced at Lu Tianling and Laozu. A faint smile appeared on his face. The spectators also shook their heads. He lost. This Lu Ping is still not Ouyang Weijian's match. After all, he's honed his skills by fighting against demonic cultivators. The tempering between life and death is not something that can be compared to hard work. This Lu Ping is not bad. Although he lost to Ouyang Weijian among cultivators of the same cultivation level, it's still a glorious defeat. Both of their sword techniques belong to the ranks of the same generation. Just when everyone thought that Lu Ping would admit defeat, a strange whistling sound of a sword suddenly appeared out of nowhere. An awe-inspiring sword intent soared into the sky, as if it was going to pierce through the sky. Some cultivators who liked to hold flying swords in their hands as decorations suddenly realized that the flying swords in their hands seemed to be uncontrollably shaking violently. Different from the cultivators who didn't know what was going on, the expressions of the late-stage core forging spiritual masters from the 9 great sects all changed greatly. Perfected Lin Xuqing even jumped up. His expression kept changing. In the end, he looked at Lu Tianling and Laozu beside him and sat down resentfully. However, his face was already so gloomy that it seemed like it was about to drip water. The two minor spells that Ouyang Weijian used to kill Lu Ping seemed to be under an inexplicable pressure at this moment. It seemed like they were going to break free from his control and collapse on their own. Ouyang Weijian's expression changed. Although he didn't know what Lu Ping was doing, he knew that this effect must be caused by Lu Ping. At this moment, a strange whistling sound rang out again. The golden scale sword had returned to Lu Ping's hand. At this moment, a great pressure directly pressed down on the psychic flexible sword and natal flying sword. This pressure didn't come from divine sense, but from sword intent. It came from a brand new realm of swordsmanship, a realm that could sublimate swordsmanship. This was the realm of great swordsmanship. Ouyang Weijian's face turned pale. He never thought that Lu Ping's swordsmanship had already reached such a height that he couldn't even reach. Lu Ping has been pretending to be weak. He's using himself to hone his swordsmanship, and he's also forcing me to use all of my means to show him all of my trump cards. Then, when I'm the most confident, he'll use the sharpest and most unbeatable method to defeat me in one fell swoop. Whether it's swordsmanship or state of mind, he'll suffer a complete defeat. Ouyang Weijian instantly understood what Lu Ping was thinking. A look of resentment rushed out, and his face suddenly became somewhat twisted. Ouyang Weijian's pair of minor swordsmanship spells became vulnerable in front of Lu Ping's. All rivers run into the sea. Swordsmanship spell. The sword lights and wind blades that filled the sky were like young swallows flying into the forest. They were attracted by Lu Ping's. All rivers run into the sea, and disappeared like a drop of water falling into the sea. The psychic flexible sword and natal flying sword finally got rid of the attraction of Lu Ping's swordsmanship spell and flew back to Ouyang Weijian's side. Under the suppression of Lu Ping's swordsmanship spell, it would be difficult for them to do anything. This is a swordsmanship spell! Among the many cultivators watching the battle, someone finally recognized the swordsmanship realm Lu Ping displayed. Except for the core forging masters of the 9 great sects and Lu Tianling Laozu, the rest of the cultivators were in an uproar. Lu Ping had actually mastered a swordsmanship spell. He was only at the 3rd stage of core forging, but he was able to master a swordsmanship spell that was second only to the lightning-type spell. Chapter 348. Ouyang Weijian's meticulously laid-out pair of minor swordsmanship skills immediately crumbled in the face of Lu Ping's major swordsmanship skill. Ouyang Weijian's face was ashen, as if he had lost his parents. Lu Ping's earth-shattering sword technique disappeared in a flash, but the many cultivators watching from below were shocked. The various core forging masters in the palace of Zhonghua also had complicated expressions. Even Lu Tianling and Laozu had a look of joy on their faces. Lu Ping's senior sisters and brothers were even more surprised. Xiantianjunren turned to Li Xuanru and asked, "Junior sister, when did junior brother Xianping learn such a great technique? This time, he really shocked the world with a single brilliant feat. He grasped a great sword technique at the early core forging stage. No wonder he dared to cause trouble for Li Xianliang by himself. The North Sea rookie list will probably change again. With such a trump card, even I might not be able to do anything to him." Li Xuanru smiled and said, "Eldest senior brother must be joking. This 9th brother usually hides his good stuff. No wonder some people have given him the title of cultivator with many treasures. As for when he will be able to cultivate a great divine swordsmanship, let alone me as his senior sister, I'm afraid even master doesn't know. However, if even eldest senior brother can't do anything to him, then that's giving him too much credit," Xiantianjunren said seriously. "This is not a joke. Whether or not one can master the great theurgy during the core forging stage, as well as the amount of great theurgy mastered, is often related to the level of a practitioner's strength after reaching the Dharma stage. Master and mistress were the most outstanding disciples of their generation. Both of them mastered the great theurgy not long after reaching the mid-core forging stage. After that, I don't know how many great theurgy they mastered before reaching the Dharma stage. I'm about to reach the late core forging stage, but I've only perfected one great technique. I've only just begun to figure out my second great technique. Junior brother is only at the early core forging stage and has already mastered a great technique. How can we accept this?" One Xianjing said in a low voice. "Eldest senior brother, you're being unreasonable. You've already started cultivating your second great ability, but I haven't even cultivated my first great ability yet. Compared to old 9th, wouldn't we be ashamed to death?" Second senior brother Taoist Xiangua, who had always been difficult to talk to, suddenly said, "He is the same as master and master's wife. They are all peerless geniuses. We shouldn't compare ourselves to them. We should just be ourselves." As soon as Taoist Xiangua finished speaking, everyone stopped talking. However, their hearts were filled with complicated feelings, and they all had their own plans. "Brother Ouyang, thanks for letting me win." Lu Ping put away the golden scale sword, cupped his hands, and said with a smile, Ouyang Weijian was indeed worthy of being one of Xianling sect's peerless geniuses. He quickly recovered from the despair and resentment. Although his face was still pale, he had regained his composure. He cupped his fists and forced a smile. Brother Lu's swordsmanship is superb. I've learned a lot from it. I admit defeat. Ouyang Weijian was like a completely different person, which made Lu Ping think highly of him. This Ouyang Weijian is not simple. In any case, it is impossible for me to be the only one making progress in the world of cultivation. If Lu Ping had not mastered the great magical swordsmanship, he might not be a match for Ouyang Weijian in terms of swordsmanship. Unless... Lu Ping thought of the aqua sword again. If he could upgrade it to a magic weapon and use the invisible sword technique, he could coordinate it with the golden scale sword. At that time, even if he didn't use the great magical swordsmanship, Ouyang Weijian would not be a match for him. Of course, if it was a life and death battle, Lu Ping would not be stupid enough to fight with only swordsmanship. Lu Ping's methods were not limited to swordsmanship. The two returned to the hall of Zhonghua and thanked Lu Tianling and Laozu before returning to their respective seats. At this time, Taoist Master Lin Xuqing said, "Martial nephew Lu is indeed a genius. To be able to comprehend the great magical swordsmanship at the early stage of core forging, I'm afraid this is unprecedented in the North Sea's cultivation world. Furthermore, martial nephew Lu is so young. In the future, I believe you will be invincible among the new generation of cultivators in the North Sea's cultivation world. Your future is limitless. I'm afraid your sect will be proud of you in the future." When Lu Ping first met enlightened Master Lin Xuqing after Fei Ling Island closed, Lu Ping always thought that enlightened Master Lin Xuqing was a kind and honest person. But he didn't expect that enlightened Master Lin Xuqing would intentionally slander him twice in a row. Perhaps it was because Feng Su Dao was too overbearing, or maybe it was because Xianling sect was forced by the circumstances. But Lu Ping always thought that enlightened Master Lin Xuqing was a kind and honest person. If the title of the number one rising star of the North Sea was spread today, one could imagine what kind of trouble Lu Ping would encounter in the future. Because of Zhenling's power, not many people came to challenge Lu Ping, but in the future, he would inevitably be schemed against behind his back. Since ancient times, the rafters that stuck out rotted first, and Lu Ping didn't want to lose his life without knowing why. Moreover, a sect's prestige was supported by countless cultivators. There had never been a sect that could be supported by just one cultivator. Although Taoist Master Laozu's words were simple and obvious, it might not be ineffective. Even if he had Dharma idol Laozu as his teacher, he might still be oppressed by people with ulterior motives. After Taoist Master Lin Xuqing finished speaking, the cultivators in the palace of Zhonghua Light fell silent. Even the Flying Feather sect cultivators who had been echoing Taoist Master Lin Xuqing didn't say anything. After all, although Taoist Master Lin Xuqing's words were malicious, it was just a friendly match, not a matter of life and death. If they spoke up now and Lu Ping was really schemed to death, there was no guarantee that Zhenling wouldn't blame Flying Feather sect. Flying Feather sect was not like Xianling sect, they couldn't withstand Zhenling's wrath. Lu Ping wasn't one to be bullied. When he saw Taoist Master Lin Xuqing's tricks, he immediately replied, "Senior Lin, you flatter me. There are many crouching tigers and hidden dragons in the cultivation world, and there are many who are stronger than me. Not everyone can be like your sect's Dao Xing Laozu. That is the true invincible existence in the North Sea." Lu Ping's words could only insinuate that Xianling's sect had no successor. After all, Dao Xing Laozu had already reached the peak of the cultivation world. Even if others hated him to death, they couldn't do anything to him. But Lu Ping was different. Before he grew up, there were countless ways to kill him. After the battle between Lu Ping and Ouyang Weijian, there were a few other cultivators who came forward to learn from each other. However, in terms of excitement, they weren't as exciting as the battle between Lu Ping and Ouyang Weijian. Most of the people who fought held back and stopped at the right time, which made some of the cultivators who were watching the show feel bored. However, the cultivators in the palace of Zhonghua Light each gained something. These cultivators all had sharp eyes and could often come up with some conclusions from the parts that others had overlooked. Even Lu Ping used his 3 pure eyes from time to time to carefully analyze the process of the cultivators fighting, and he felt that he had gained a lot from it. After the cultivators had finished learning from each other, it was time for Tianling Laozu to come up to the podium and give his speech. This was the main event of the Dharma meeting, and it was also Jinling's way of giving feedback to the cultivators who came to participate in the Dharma meeting. Even though Tianling Laozu only talked about some of his experiences in breaking through to the Dharma stage, and not the detailed process of breaking through to the Dharma stage, there were very few cultivators who had reached the Dharma stage, and Tianling Laozu had just broken through to the Dharma stage. He was still in the most profound stage of understanding about the process of breaking through to the Dharma stage. Therefore, in the eyes of the core forging cultivators, these things became more and more precious. Just as Lu Ping was about to listen attentively, he felt a light touch from behind. When Lu Ping turned his head, he saw second senior sister gesturing to him. Lu Ping was full of doubts. Even though he was unwilling, he had no choice but to leave the palace of Zhonghua Light. Outside the palace, Lu Ping found that not only was second senior sister with him, but all the core forging disciples of the Chonghua house and the 4 core forging disciples of the Xiaoyao house were also here. Lu Ping was stunned. He knew that something big had happened. Sure enough, eldest senior brother Xiantian looked at the crowd with a serious face and said, "The demon race has launched an attack on the outer islands of the sect. The elders of the sect have informed me to wait for the Heaven's Spirit Hall and prepare to use the teleportation array to the outer islands to help defend against the demon race's attack." Hearing this, Lu Ping was shocked. He said, "Eldest senior brother, this time the demon race is launching an all-out attack, or are they only targeting our sect?" Xiantian's spiritual master was stunned. He said, "Only targeting our sect? Little junior brother, have you thought of something?" Lu Ping shook his head. He said, "I'm not sure. I just hope that the demon race is not targeting Master's Dharma Manifestation Assembly." Everyone's hearts tightened when they heard that. The Heaven Spirit Hall was not too far away from the Chonghua Manor. When everyone arrived, there were already 20 to 30 core forging adepts gathered in the hall. The 3 adepts at the front of the hall caused everyone's spirits to rise. At the same time, they felt that something big had probably happened. Seeing the 3 spiritual masters, Lu Ping was also stunned. The premonition in his heart grew stronger. Among the 3, spiritual master Gui Xianshan was the leader, while spiritual master Liang Xianfeng and spiritual master Xianin were on his side. Among the 7 most famous core forging spiritual masters in Jinling, there were the 3 spiritual masters and 4 spiritual masters. Apart from Jiang Tianlin, the carefree spiritual master, Lu Tianling, the water spiritual master, Lu Tianling, and a mysterious spiritual master, Chu Xuanqing, the fire spiritual master, who had been guarding Xianqi Island. He was at the forefront of the battle against the demon race. The other 3 spiritual masters were all here: Mountain Spirit's spiritual master, Gui Xianshan, Wind spiritual master, Liang Xianfeng, and Shadow spiritual master, Li Xianing. Seeing that almost everyone had arrived, spiritual master Gui Xianshan said in a deep voice, "The demon race's attack is not small. Now, all the small islands in the eastern periphery have fallen into a bitter battle. Senior Sister Tianling's Dharma Manifestation Assembly is currently being held. Many cultivators of the North Sea are gathered on Tianling Mountain. We cannot let the demon race break through any of our islands during this period." Hearing this, the cultivators in the hall frowned. They all realized the seriousness of the problem. At this time, spiritual master Liang Xianfeng also said, "Now that the demon race has only attacked our Jinling clan, I'm afraid they're here for senior sister Tianling's Dharma Manifestation Assembly. Apart from the core forging spiritual masters guarding the islands and the necessary ones guarding Tianling Mountain, everyone that can be mobilized is here. Go to the small islands where the battle is the fiercest and help the cultivators stationed there to defend against the demon race's attack. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows. Seeing that everyone had started to walk to the teleportation array outside the hall, he couldn't help but send a voice transmission to Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng. Uncle Master, aren't you afraid that the demon race is luring us away? Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng glanced at him and said, The three of us are here. Lu Ping was stunned. He chuckled and turned to walk to the teleportation array. Spiritual Master Gui Xianshan looked at Lu Ping's back and said, This is Senior Sister Tianling's 9th disciple? He's quite a meticulous person to be able to guess that the demon race might sneak into the internal endless sea to attack Tianling Mountain. He's quite bold to ask you directly. Chapter 349. I wonder how many demonic cultivators have infiltrated the inner sea at this time. Have the clans on the outer islands of Tianling Mountain made their move? Perfected Liang Xianfeng asked as he saw Lu Ping and the others leave the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Reverend Gui Xianshan chuckled coldly and said, Of course they're on the move, and they have no choice but to give it their all. The demonic beast's attack on the outer islands this time is just a cover for the demonic cultivators who have snuck into the inner seas. The purpose of these demonic cultivators is to disrupt Senior Sister Tianling's Dharma Summit, and to strike a blow to the morale of our sex cultivators. As long as they can charge into the summit and kill 2 people, our Zhenling sect's reputation in the North Seas will naturally fall. However, these demonic cultivators can only do so much. Do you really think that a few demonic cultivators can destroy our Zhenling sect now that the Dharma ancestors are fighting each other? Perfected Liang Xianfeng smiled. That's true. Let's head outside first. If the clans can't stop the infiltrating demonic cultivators, we'll be the last line of defense for the Dharma Manifestation Conference. As soon as Perfected Liang Xianfeng finished speaking, he turned into a gust of wind and disappeared from the hall. Perfected Gui Xianshan nodded at Perfected Mysterious Yin beside him and disappeared into the ground. Even Debao would be shocked if he saw this. This was clearly an earth escape technique, and it was far more skillful than Debao's. Just as Perfected Gui Xianshan entered the ground, Perfected Mysterious Yin had already disappeared, leaving behind only an empty hall. Lu Ping arrived at the teleportation array and saw a group of True Spirit Side Hall disciples led by 2 blood condensation immortals. Apart from them, there were also more than 20 inner blood condensation disciples, blood condensation cultivators from Zhenling's subsidiary clans, and rogue cultivators. Seeing Lu Ping arrive, everyone respectfully made way for him in the center of the teleportation array. Lu Ping smiled and nodded at everyone before walking straight to the center of the teleportation array. The teleportation array was activated. At this time, Lu Ping no longer felt dizzy like when he was in the teleportation array. He just used his divine sense to guard his body, and at the same time, he carefully experienced the wonderful process of teleportation. A white light flashed, and 40 to 50 people suddenly appeared on a small island. Before Lu Ping had time to observe the familiar things around him, his ears were already filled with a loud battle cry, and his body was surrounded by violent spiritual energy. Looking at the cultivators who had rushed over with them, the faces of the monastery disciples were flushed red. Their faces were filled with excitement, as if they had just entered a battlefield for the first time. The other blood condensation cultivators, on the other hand, were much calmer. Clearly, they had experience fighting on the battlefield. Lu Ping spread out his divine sense and immediately enveloped more than half of the island. When he found that Taoist Chu Xuanqing was not on Xianqi Island, Lu Ping frowned. Suddenly, he sensed 2 familiar auras. Delighted, Lu Ping flew towards the center of the island. When the blood condensation cultivators on the teleportation array saw Lu Ping leaving, they also turned into rays of light and flew towards the surroundings of Xianqi Island. Under the leadership of 2 immortals, a group of monastery disciples formed into 2 3 talents 5 elements Tao soldier formations, and headed towards the northeast and southeast, the two most turbulent spiritual energy areas. At the top of the mountain where Taoist Chu Xuanqing had opened his cave abode, Chen Lian had also sensed Lu Ping's arrival. "I didn't expect junior brother to come to Xianqi Island to provide support." Chen Lian laughed from afar. Lu Ping also said, "Maybe it's because I'm too familiar with this place, so I was sent here." "But why don't I see Uncle Master Chu?" Chen Lian said helplessly. "Uncle Master Chu has a fiery temper. How could he bear to stay on the island? He has already left the island to fight. Instead, he asked me to stay on the island as a firefighter." Lu Ping frowned. "There are only 2 core forging cultivators on the island, you and Uncle Master Chu?" Chen Lian nodded. "How many do you think there are? Our sect and the demon race are in a deadlock on the small islands in the eastern outer sea. From north to south, there are a total of 37 small islands, each of which is guarded by at least 1 core forging enlightened master. Xianqi Island is located in the southernmost area and has always been attacked by the demon race. Furthermore, Xianqi Island is rich, which is why Uncle Master Chu is stationed here all year round. With me, a new core forging cultivator, we can be considered the strongest defensive force among the 46 small islands." Lu Ping nodded and asked, "What's the situation on the island now?" Chen Lian said seriously, "The demon race's attack is very urgent. The island can still be defended, otherwise Uncle Master Chu wouldn't have gone off the island to fight. Now that you and a group of blood condensation cultivators have arrived, the situation should be better. However, the island's protective array has been greatly depleted. Junior Marshal Sister Hu and a few cultivators who are proficient in array formations have been maintaining the array formation in the cave. You can go down and take a look first. I'll go to the place where the battle is the most intense. Who knows, there might be more high-level demon race cultivators later. I'll be busy then." Chen Lian was about to leave when he suddenly thought of something. He turned around and threw 3 items to Lu Ping. "These are the magic treasures I gave you. You'll probably need them later." Lu Ping happily accepted the 3 mystic treasures. They were none other than the landslide and water nether sword that had been enchanted with the treasure seal. The psychic jade pendant that Lu Ping always wore had also been upgraded to the mystic treasure grade. It was made from the 1,000-year frost jade. Lu Ping nodded at Chen Lian and flew into the cave dwelling. By then, Chen Lian had already transformed into a ball of fire and was flying towards the east. In the center of the fire, a beancurd-sized silver jade flame flickered incessantly. It was the low-grade mystic class heaven and earth spirit fire, the stone jade fire. Enlightened Master Chu Xuanqing's cave was divided into 2 parts. The back was Enlightened Master Chu's cultivation room, while the front was where the island's protective array disk was. This array disk was twice the size of the Li family's island's protective array disk on Flying Thunder Island. The array disk was also much more complex. There were more than 200 mid-grade spirit stones inlaid on the periphery of the array disk. In the center, there were 5 high-grade spirit stones inlaid in each of the 4 directions. The surface of these spirit stones emitted a dense spiritual light, activating the entire array disk. Together with the array formation props around Xianqi Island, they supported the operation of the island's protective array. At this time, Hu Lily and the other 3 late blood condensation female cultivators were guarding the array disk. From time to time, the spirit stones on the array disk would shatter due to the exhaustion of spiritual energy. At this time, someone would step forward and inlay a new spirit stone, so that the island's protective array would not weaken. Seeing Lu Ping coming, Hu Lily's face lit up. However, with others present, the 2 of them acted more reserved. When the other 3 saw a core forging realm enlightened master, they all stood up to greet him, but Lu Ping dodged to the side. Only then did the 3 realize that Lu Ping was looking for Hu Lily. They all smiled and hid to the side. Lu Ping looked at the blushing Hu Lily and asked softly, "How's the situation on the island?" Hu Lily frowned and said softly, "The demon race's attack is very fierce. The island's protective array has consumed a lot of spirit stones, but fortunately, the island's protective array is operating normally. Oh, Lu Ping said. Do you still have enough spirit stones? Hu Lili thought for a moment and said, if the demon race doesn't send more troops, or if they send more high-level cultivators, according to the current consumption rate, we should be able to last for 2 days. Moreover, our Sex Tianling Mountain will send more reinforcements. As soon as Hu Lili's voice fell, she heard a loud bang coming from the south side of the island. Then, almost half of the spirit stones inlaid on the south side of the formation plate cracked and shattered. Even 2 of the 5 upper-grade spirit stones in the innermost layer were broken. Hu Lili exclaimed in shock. She quickly exchanged the damaged spirit stones with the other 3 women and said, "It's a core forging realm demon cultivator." Lu Ping nodded and tossed an interspatial pouch to Hu Lili. Then, he quickly flew towards the south of the island. At this moment, another loud explosion came from the south. The 4 women's cries came from the cave behind them. Lu Ping's divine sense had already locked onto the core forging realm demon cultivator who was attacking the island's protective array. The island's protective array's light barrier had been broken twice by the enlightened beast cultivator, and the array's rebound force prevented the enlightened beast cultivator from rushing into Xianqi Island. The array quickly recovered, but more than 10 blood condensation realm demon beasts took the opportunity to enter and fight with the island's Jinling cultivators. At this time, the enlightened beast cultivator had already noticed Lu Ping's arrival and stopped attacking the array. Hu Lili, who had just replenished the spirit stones on the array disc, brushed away the damp hair on her forehead and opened the storage pouch Lu Ping handed to her. Immediately, she sucked in a breath of cold air. Inside the pouch were 5,000 mid-grade spirit stones, worth 500,000 spirit stones. When Lu Ping arrived, 3 of the dozen demon beasts that broke into the island had already been killed by the island's cultivators. Another 5 or 6 were trapped, and the remaining 4 or 5 were too strong for the cultivators to control. 2 of them died in a row. Just as the 5 late blood condensation demonic beasts temporarily repelled the cultivators who surrounded them, and were about to join forces with the other demonic beasts outside the island to break the island's defensive formation again, a dense killing intent suddenly surged towards them. The suppressive aura of a core forging cultivator instantly suppressed the 5 late blood condensation demonic beasts. Immediately after, a golden flying sword pierced through the air, and 5 bloody lines appeared on the bodies of the 5 demonic beasts. They fell to the ground with a loud thud, and their bodies were split into 2. When the cultivators guarding the island saw Lu Ping's invincible aura, they all cheered loudly. The enlightened beast cultivator outside the island also saw all this, and he immediately let out an angry howl. However, he didn't attack the island's protective array again. Instead, he sent a provocative aura towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping chuckled, and his divine sense turned into a giant hammer and smashed towards the enlightened beast cultivator's divine sense. The enlightened beast cultivator didn't expect Lu Ping's divine sense to be so powerful. He immediately felt a pain in his divine sense, as if he had been hit by a heavy blow. He couldn't help but cry out in pain. By the time the enlightened beast cultivator realized something was wrong, Lu Ping's golden scale sword had already slashed towards his throat. Chapter 350. The island-protecting formation of Xianqi Island was an energy shield formed by the gathering of heaven and earth's spiritual qi. It could be broken by external forces from a single point, but it would restore the broken shield in a very short period of time. Of course, this would consume a huge amount of energy from the formation itself. This was why Hu Lili and the other 3 stayed in Taoist Master Chu Xuanqing's cave mansion to constantly replace the spirit stones that contained spiritual power. Of course, this was under the condition that external forces were not enough to completely destroy the island-protecting formation. For example, Lu Ping used 2 minor magical attacks on Flying Thunder Island to break the island-protecting formation of the Li family. That situation was first because the Li family did not have any cultivators to guard the formation, and secondly, it was deliberately done by Lu Ping. Moreover, the power of the island protecting formation of the Li family on Flying Thunder Island was far inferior to that of Xianqi Island. Lu Ping's divine sense swept around and found that although the island protecting formation of Xianqi Island was broken by the joint efforts of the demonic beasts from time to time, and a few demonic beasts broke in, they were quickly killed by the cultivators. It did not affect Xianqi Island too much. Most of the cultivators could rely on the protection of the island protecting formation to use the magic weapons in their hands to resist the attacks of the demonic beasts outside the island. Lu Ping, who was relieved, used the divine sense attack that he had just learned from his teacher's speech and unexpectedly injured the Taoist master outside the island. The golden scales sword took the opportunity to slash the Taoist master's throat. When the demonic cultivator woke up, his face turned pale with fright. He only had time to cast a small protective magical power, but it was pierced by the golden scales sword. A bloody light flashed, and a crisp sound rang out. The golden scales sword was protected by a blood-red magical ring around its neck. The blade of the sword streaked across the magical ring and cut off a large piece of flesh from the demonic cultivator's shoulder. Although the transformed Taoist master was no different from a normal human, being seriously injured by a cultivator of the same level still made this Taoist master burst out with primitive hostility. A long and painful howl rang out, as the Sage Yao cultivator instantly escaped from Lu Ping's attack range. At the same time, a long spear appeared in his hand, which he hurled towards the island's Grand Array formation. The speed of the spear was extremely fast. Before Lu Ping could block it with his golden scales sword, a crisp sound rang out. The spear had already pierced through the island's Grand Protective Array, leaving a large hole of 10 feet in size. The demonic beasts outside burst into a clamor, as if they were cheering for the strength of the Taoist demon cultivator. Several demonic beasts leaped up one after another, and before the island's Grand Protective Array could automatically repair itself, they crashed into the hole. The cultivators on Xianqi Island spontaneously formed 5 simple formations and surrounded the demonic beasts. Suddenly, several red lines appeared on the bodies of the 5 late blood condensation demonic beasts. Under the shocked gazes of the cultivators, the demonic beasts fell to the ground and broke into dozens of pieces. Blood splattered all over the ground. The cultivators on the island looked at Lu Ping excitedly. Among the cultivators present, only a core-forging enlightened master like Lu Ping had the ability to instantly kill the late blood condensation demonic beasts with such a strange method. The Sage Yao cultivator outside the island looked at Lu Ping with increasingly gloomy eyes. He stretched out his hands and threw another 2 spears towards the Grand Protective Array. This time, Lu Ping was already prepared. The golden scales sword sprinkled out sword light that filled the sky, and it slashed towards the 2 spears. Ding ding dang dang. The sound of metal clashing rang out incessantly. Lu Ping's expression changed. Amidst Lu Ping's sword light, a spear actually broke through the encirclement and pierced a large hole in the Grand Protective Array. One of the cultivators couldn't dodge in time and could only let out a scream before the spear pierced through his body. He was dead. However, the spear that fell to the ground disappeared, leaving behind a large bloody hole in the cultivator's body. In Lu Ping's divine sense, the spear suddenly exploded into a ball of spiritual energy and quickly disappeared into the heaven and earth. This spear wasn't a magic tool, but a minor divine ability of the Sage Yao cultivator. Lu Ping instantly sensed that something was wrong. With a flash of light, he appeared outside Xianqi Island. The Sage Yao cultivator thrust another 2 spears at him. Lu Ping's golden scales sword only managed to cut down 1 spear, but the other spear pierced through the Grand Protective Array and killed a late blood condensation cultivator. When the attacking demonic beasts outside the island saw that Lu Ping, a human core-forging cultivator, had suddenly left the island, they howled. Several more demonic beasts flew into the hole that the spear pierced through and started fighting with the cultivators inside. However, before the demonic beasts could get excited for long, a strange buzzing sound came from afar. A purple cloud flowed over from the center of Xianqi Island, instantly wrapping around a peak blood condensation demonic beast that had just escaped from the cultivator's encirclement. An enraged roar came from the purple cloud, which then turned into a scream. The purple cloud continued to sway, and it looked as if the demonic beast was struggling in its true form. However, as the scream grew softer and softer, the purple cloud also grew calmer. At this moment, the purple cloud suddenly exploded, leaving only a corpse riddled with holes on the ground. The purple cloud that had exploded gathered once again in the sky. At this time, people could clearly see that this purple cloud was actually nearly 1,000 fist-sized purple bees. The swarm of bees flew over and circled above the Xianqi Island cultivators. Only then did the Xianqi Island cultivators notice that among the buzzing of the purple bees, there seemed to be a deep but distant sound of drum beating. Once a demonic beast broke through the island's grand protective array, the sound of the drum would change. The swarm of bees would gather in the sky, forming a rotating array that would envelop one of the demonic beasts. When the swarm of bees exploded and reassembled in the sky, only the demonic beast's corpse was left on the ground. After leaving Xianqi Island, Lu Ping quickly rushed towards the demonic cultivator. At the same time, Lu Ping also understood why enlightened Master Chu Xuanqing left Xianqi Island to fight with the demonic cultivator. Although the Grand Protective Array could withstand the attacks of demonic beasts, it could only protect Blood Condensation Realm cultivators and Blood Condensation Realm demonic beasts. However, for enlightened masters in the core forging realm, the Grand Protective Array might be able to stop them for a while, but enlightened masters in the core forging realm had ways to kill the Blood Condensation Realm cultivators who were protected by the array. Lu Ping could only passively defend against the demonic cultivators' attacks. Even though Lu Ping had 1,000 tricks up his sleeves, the Grand Protective Array had become an obstacle for him. Just as Lu Ping left Xianqi Island, he realized something. This was also a sect's hope for its cultivators. During the Blood Condensation Realm, the sect would protect the cultivators. But once the cultivators entered the core forging realm and became high-grade cultivators, the sect would have to shoulder the responsibility and face the sect head-on instead of hiding behind the array formation to avoid the danger. When the demonic cultivator saw Lu Ping leaving Xianqi Island, his expression changed. He turned around and wanted to retreat. When Lu Ping was protecting his sect's Blood Condensation Realm cultivators in the Grand Protective Array, the demonic cultivator had nothing to fear. But when Lu Ping stood out, the demonic cultivator immediately remembered Lu Ping's sharp sword strike. Seeing him retreat, Lu Ping's face was filled with anger. This person had killed 2 of his sect's disciples in front of him. This made Lu Ping feel ashamed. The cultivator who was pierced by the spear was obviously not able to dodge the demonic cultivator's attack. However, it was obvious that he was very confident in Lu Ping's protection and was a little careless. Although the demonic cultivator's expression was a little anxious, he didn't panic when retreating. But at this moment, he heard Lu Ping's cold snort. The demonic cultivator had a bad premonition. Suddenly, a cold intent came from his side. The demonic cultivator recalled the scene of those late blood condensation demonic beasts being strangely dismembered on Xianqi Island, and a chill ran down his spine. A blood-red ring appeared once again, growing bigger and trapping the demonic cultivator inside. However, that cold intent suddenly disappeared. The Taoist Master Yao was suspicious. The blood-red ring magic treasure was still protecting him, but suddenly discovered that the top of his head darkened. A huge silver jade-colored seal descended with a loud rumble. The demonic cultivator instantly sensed the huge power contained in the seal. His expression changed dramatically. A huge clamshell suddenly rose up, and the demonic cultivator's upper body suddenly transformed into a huge, ferocious-looking, iron-armed crocodile. It raised both its arms, and the surface of the huge clamshell was suddenly covered with a layer of iron-black halo. Lu Ping knew that the demonic cultivator had fused his protective divine ability with the clamshell-shaped protective treasure. This was a secret technique commonly used by core forging Taoists to greatly enhance their defensive abilities. This was the first time Qinlian used landslide after it was upgraded to a magic treasure. Although it only condensed one restriction, it made a qualitative leap in the power of landslide. A loud noise resounded, causing the attacks of the demonic beasts that were attacking Xianqi Island in the distance to stagnate. When landslide fell, it brought about a huge wind pressure that compressed the seawater under the demonic cultivator's feet into a huge pit. The demonic cultivator, whose upper body had transformed into a demonic body, stubbornly resisted the pressure of landslide. His entire iron-black body suddenly overflowed with a layer of strange red. However, this was not the end. Ding ding, 2 crisp sounds rang out. The red bracelet around the demonic cultivator's body was knocked by 2 identical jade bracelets. A cold and hot aura was suddenly channeled into the blood-red bracelet. The blood-red bracelet suddenly trembled with a buzzing sound. The demonic cultivator's expression changed. His Jinyuan, under the guidance of the cold and hot aura in the bracelet, suddenly had a feeling of losing control. The red light on the surface of the demonic cultivator's body flourished, unexpectedly pushing back landslide in one fell swoop. Just as he was about to stabilize the blood-red bracelet, he suddenly looked startled. He reached out to touch his neck. Just as the demonic cultivator's hand touched his neck, a faint red line appeared. The demonic cultivator looked at Lu Ping with a look of despair and fear. He opened his mouth and let out a howl. Suddenly, blood burst out of his throat, and his head fell backward. The howl stopped abruptly. When the demonic beasts that were attacking the formation behind him wailed, as if they had received a shocking command, they all sank into the seawater. The demonic birds in the sky also scattered. Lu Ping took the opportunity to throw a little turtle into the seawater. The little turtle's feet were still entangled with 3 small snakes. The cultivators on Xianqi Island behind him had just burst into a burst of cheers when 3 consecutive howls suddenly came from 3 directions several miles away. 3 core forging stage demonic cultivators aura rushed straight over. Lu Ping's expression changed. This was obviously a trap, waiting for the core forging stage cultivator to fall into it. However, he didn't expect that the demonic cultivator, who was the bait, would die before he could lure Lu Ping into the trap. Lu Ping's heart palpitated not because of the 3 core forging stage demonic cultivators, but because of where Taoist Chu Xuanqing was. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.